I woke up in a hospital bed with bandages wrapped around my head, and the first thing I heard was my mother telling the doctor, "Good, maybe this will teach her to stop being so selfish with family." The memory came flooding back like a tidal wave, my younger sister Ashley demanding $3,000 for Botox treatments, me refusing because I needed every penny for my daughter's medical bills, and then Ashley's rage-filled attacks slamming my head against our parents' marble floor. Now, staring at the skull fracture report trembling in my hands, I realized my family had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. The sterile hospital room felt safer than any family gathering I'd attended in years. As I lay there processing what had happened, memories of our childhood played through my mind like a broken film reel. Growing up as the responsible older sister while Ashley was pampered and protected had shaped everything about who we became. At 28, I worked 2 jobs to keep our heads above water. My days started at 5 in the morning at Riverside Medical Center, where I processed billing claims until 3 in the afternoon. Then I'd rush to pick up Emma from after-school care and drop her at my neighbor Mrs. Chen's apartment before heading to my evening shift at Target. 4 nights a week, I stood behind a register until 11, scanning items and forcing smiles while my feet screamed in protest. Ashley at 24 lived a completely different life. She still occupied her childhood bedroom in our parents' 4,000-square-foot house in Westwood Heights. Her walls were covered with vision boards featuring luxury cars, designer handbags, and photos of influencers she followed religiously on Instagram. She dropped out of 3 different colleges, first Northwestern because the coursework was boring, then DePaul because the commute was exhausting, and finally, the local community college because it was beneath her potential. Our parents, Frank and Diane Bennett, had built their wealth through Frank's commercial real estate business. They'd always drawn clear distinctions between us. I was the smart one, expected to handle everything independently, while Ashley was the beautiful one, who needed constant support and understanding. When I graduated high school with a 4.0 GPA, they gave me a savings bond for college. When Ashley barely scraped through with a 2.5, they threw her a party that cost more than my entire first year of tuition. The pattern had started early. When I was 7 and Ashley was 3, she broke my ceramic piggy bank to get the quarters inside. I'd been saving for months to buy a book series I wanted. When I told our parents, crying over the shattered pieces, my mother scolded me for not sharing with my baby sister. They bought Ashley ice cream to stop her tantrum when I asked her to apologize. The piggy bank was never replaced, and I learned to hide anything I valued. Emma's existence had shifted the dynamic even further. When Jake left us 2 years ago, abandoning his responsibilities for a fresh start in California with his 22-year-old yoga instructor, my parents' reaction was telling. My mother's first words were, "Well, Miranda, you always were too focused on your career. Men need attention." Meanwhile, Ashley had cycled through dozens of relationships, each ending when the men realized she expected them to fund her lifestyle without contributing anything beyond her presence. The financial pressure had been mounting for months. Emma's chronic ear infections required surgery that our insurance classified as elective Z, despite 3 specialists confirming it was necessary to prevent permanent hearing damage. The procedure would cost $8,000, and I'd managed to save $5,000 by skipping meals, selling everything valuable I owned, and taking every extra shift available. The day before the attack, Ashley had shown up at my apartment uninvited. She used the spare key I'd foolishly given her for emergencies, waltzing in while Emma and I were having dinner, a modest meal of spaghetti with butter and frozen peas. Ashley wrinkled her nose at our food before launching into her demand. "I need $3,000 for Botox and lip fillers," she announced, scrolling through her phone to show me photos of the injector she'd chosen. "She's booked solid for 3 months, but she had a cancellation for next week. It's basically fate." I set down my fork, carefully aware of Emma watching us with wide eyes. "Ashley, I can't give you money. Emma needs surgery next month." "Surgery for what? She looks fine to me." Ashley didn't even glance at my daughter, who instinctively touched her ears. "Her ear infections. If we don't fix this now, she could lose hearing in her left ear permanently." Ashley rolled her eyes dramatically. God, Miranda, you're so dramatic about everything. Kids get ear infections all the time. This, she gestured to her face, is about my career. I'm meeting with a modeling agency next month, and I need to look perfect. The modeling career was another fiction she'd been spinning for 2 years. She'd paid a scam company $500 for professional photos taken in a strip mall studio, then created business cards declaring herself a professional model and influencer, despite having only 800 Instagram followers, half of which were clearly bots. I'm sorry, but I can't help you. Maybe Mom and Dad, they're being totally unreasonable. Ashley's voice rose to the pitch that usually preceded a meltdown. They said I need to get a job before they'll give me any more money. Can you believe that, like I'm some common retail worker? She shot a disgusted look at my Target name badge on the counter. After 20 minutes of escalating demands, guilt trips, and accusations that I was jealous of her beauty, Ashley finally stormed out, but not before sending a series of text messages to our parents, painting me as the villain who refused to help family in need. That evening, my phone buzzed with messages from my mother. Rather than asking about Emma's surgery or offering help, she lectured me about family obligations and suggested I was poisoning Emma against her aunt by being so selfish with money. The messages concluded with her favorite manipulation tactic. After everything we've done for you, the least you could do is help your sister when she needs it. I powered off my phone and focused on Emma's bedtime routine, reading her favorite story about a brave little mouse who saved her family from a flood. As I tucked her in, she asked quietly, "Mommy, why does Aunt Ashley always yell at you?" I smoothed her dark hair, so different from Ashley's bleached blonde extensions. "Sometimes people get upset when they don't get what they want, baby, but that doesn't make it okay to yell." "I don't like when she visits," Emma whispered. "She makes you sad." My throat tightened. At 6 years old, my daughter had already learned to read the tension that filled any room Ashley entered. "Don't worry about grown-up stuff, sweetheart. Just have sweet dreams." But as I sat in our tiny living room that night, reviewing bills and trying to figure out how to stretch our grocery budget even thinner, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was building to a breaking point. Ashley's entitlement had been growing more aggressive, her demands more unreasonable, and our parents' enabling more blind. What I didn't know was that Ashley had spent that evening crafting a narrative on social media, posting cryptic messages about toxic family members who hoard wealth while others suffer. She'd even started a GoFundMe claiming she needed money for medical procedures to advance her career, carefully cropping photos to hide our parents' mansion in the background. The security footage I would later see from our neighbors, the Johnsons, revealed something even more disturbing. Ashley hadn't left immediately after our confrontation. She'd sat in her BMW, a 21st birthday gift from our parents, for nearly an hour making phone calls. The timestamp showed her calling our parents 16 times, then calling someone saved in her phone as Brittany B. That name would become significant later, but that night I was blissfully unaware of the plan taking shape. I fell asleep on the couch, surrounded by medical bills and insurance paperwork, my phone still powered off to avoid more guilt-inducing messages. The last normal morning of my life started like any other. I woke at 4:30, showered quickly, and prepared Emma's lunch for school, a peanut butter sandwich cut into Heart's apple slices, and the last of our string cheese. I wrote a little note on her napkin, like always. "Mommy loves you to the moon and back." As I drove toward my parents' house to drop off Emma before my hospital shift, I noticed Ashley's BMW already in the driveway. My stomach clenched. She rarely woke before noon unless she had an agenda. I should have trusted that instinct. I should have turned around, called in sick, and found alternative childcare. But I didn't, because despite everything, I still believed there were lines family wouldn't cross. The morning sun cast deceptive warmth across my parents' pristine driveway as I pulled up in my aging Honda Civic. Emma clutched her worn backpack in the back seat, already sensing the tension that seemed to radiate from the house like a toxic cloud. Through the large front windows, I could see Ashley pacing in the foyer, her movements sharp and agitated. "Maybe we should go to Mrs. Chen's instead," I suggested to Emma, watching my sister's animated gestures through the glass. But Grandma said she'd make pancakes, Emma replied softly, though her usual excitement was notably absent. I helped her out of the car seat, holding her small hand as we walked to the front door. The moment we stepped inside, Ashley's presence filled the space like smoke from a fire. She wore a tight pink dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, her face contoured with expensive makeup that couldn't hide the ugly twist of her mouth. Finally, Ashley's voice cracked like a whip. "Do you have any idea how long I've been waiting?" My mother emerged from the kitchen, her silk robe pristine as always. She didn't greet Emma or me, just stood there with her arms crossed, watching the scene unfold like a judge presiding over a trial she'd already decided. "Ashley, I told you yesterday. Yesterday you humiliated me." Ashley stepped closer, her perfectly manicured finger jabbing the air near my face. "I asked you for one simple thing. One, and you acted like I was asking for your kidney." Emma pressed against my leg and I gently guided her toward the hallway. "Sweetie, why don't you go find Grandpa in his office?" "Grandpa is at a golf meeting." My mother interjected, her tone flat and unhelpful. Ashley used my moment of distraction to close the distance between us. The smell of her designer perfume, something musky and overwhelming, made my eyes water. "You have the money. I know you do. You're just being spiteful because you're jealous that I actually have a chance at something special. Emma's surgery." "Stop hiding behind that kid." Ashley's volume increased with each word. "You've been using her as an excuse for everything since Jake left. Poor Miranda, single mother, working so hard. Well, maybe if you'd paid more attention to your husband instead of acting like a martyr all the time." "That's enough." I moved toward the door, but Ashley sidestepped, blocking our path. "We're leaving." "You're not going anywhere until we settle this." Her voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. $3,000, Miranda. That's nothing to you." I almost laughed at the absurdity. "Nothing. I work 60 hours a week and still barely make rent. You live here for free. Drive a car Dad bought you. Wear clothes Mom pays for. Get a job if you need money that badly." The words triggered something primal in Ashley. Her face flushed beneath her foundation veins standing out on her neck. Behind her, my mother watched with an expression I couldn't read. Disappointment, maybe, but directed at whom? "A job," Ashley screeched. "Like yours, scanning groceries like some pathetic nobody? Processing papers at a hospital where they don't even know your name? That's not a life, Miranda. That's just existence." Emma whimpered, and I felt her trembling against my side. "We're done here. Move." I tried to step around Ashley, but she grabbed my arm, her acrylic nails digging through my thin cardigan. "You ruined everything for me. You were supposed to help." "Let go." I kept my voice level, aware of Emma watching, but Ashley's grip tightened. "Do you know what Brittany's been telling everyone, that I'm a joke? That my own family won't support my dreams? She's been laughing at me, and it's your fault." I wrenched my arm free, leaving crescent marks where her nails had been. The movement seemed to trigger something wilder in Ashley. As I turned to guide Emma around her, I felt fingers tangle in my hair, yanking me backward with surprising force. "You don't get to walk away from me." The pain shot through my scalp as Ashley dragged me away from Emma, who screamed a sound I'd never heard from my usually quiet daughter. My hands went instinctively to Ashley's wrists, trying to break her grip, but she was possessed by a rage that gave her unnatural strength. "Ashley, stop!" My mother's voice finally rang out, but it was too late. With both hands twisted in my hair, Ashley yanked me down hard. I saw the marble floor rushing up to meet me, had a split second to think about Emma, about the surgery money, about how I couldn't afford to get hurt, and then impact. The crack was audible like a branch breaking in a storm. Pain exploded through my skull, radiating down my spine in waves of agony. My vision fractured into kaleidoscope patterns before darkness rushed in from the edges. The last thing I heard was Emma screaming, "Mommy, Mommy!" and the sound of footsteps, multiple sets moving fast. Later, I would learn the rest from police reports and witness statements. The neighbor's security footage painted a clear picture of premeditation that chilled investigators. The cameras showed Ashley's friend, Brittany Colton, arriving 30 minutes before me, parking across the street with a clear view of the driveway. She sat in her white Mercedes, phone raised and recording as I arrived with Emma. The angle caught Brittany's expression when Ashley grabbed me, not shock or concern, but excitement. She actually smiled, adjusting her position for a better shot as Ashley dragged me by the hair. Only when my head hit the floor, when the sound of impact carried across the morning air, did her expression change. The phone lowered slightly as she realized this wasn't the dramatic hair-pulling catfight she'd expected to capture. Inside the house, chaos erupted after I lost consciousness. Emma ran to me, her small hands patting my face, begging me to wake up. Blood began pooling beneath my head, seeping into the pristine white marble with its gray veining, the same floor my mother had obsessed over when they renovated, insisting on the most expensive option. Ashley stood frozen for exactly 3 seconds. The security footage would confirm this before she laughed. Not a nervous laugh or a shocked laugh, but a sound of satisfaction. "Maybe now she'll listen," she said, stepping back to avoid the spreading blood. My mother's reaction was perhaps the most damning. Instead of rushing to help me or comfort Emma, she grabbed Ashley's arm. "What did you do?" But even this question held more annoyance than alarm, as if Ashley had merely broken an expensive vase. "She fell," Ashley said quickly, the lie forming instantly. "You saw it right. She tripped trying to get away from me. I barely touched her." It was Emma who had the presence of mind to scream for help, her voice carrying to the Johnson house next door. Robert Johnson, a retired firefighter, was watering his garden when he heard her cries. He didn't hesitate, using the spare key I'd given them for emergencies to enter through the side door. The scene he found would haunt him enough to later testify with tears in his eyes. A 6-year-old girl kneeling in her mother's blood, begging her to wake up. Ashley, standing several feet away, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror, adjusting her hair where the struggle had messed it. My mother on the phone, not with 911, but with my father, asking him to come home because there's been an incident. Robert immediately took control. His years of emergency response kicked in as he checked my pulse, noted my breathing, and carefully supported my head and neck while calling for paramedics. He instructed his wife, Patricia, who'd followed him in, to take Emma outside and away from the scene. "Don't move her," he barked when my mother finally approached. "She could have a spinal injury." "This is a family matter," my mother said coldly. "We don't need interference." Robert's response was blunt. "This is assault. That little girl witnessed her mother being attacked. I'm not going anywhere." Ashley tried to interject with her manufactured story about me tripping, but Robert shut her down with a look that could freeze fire. He'd already noticed the clumps of my hair still wrapped around Ashley's fingers, the defensive scratches on my hands from trying to break her grip, the pattern of blood splatter that indicated impact, not a fall. The paramedics arrived within 8 minutes, though Patricia later told me it felt like hours. They worked with professional efficiency, stabilizing my neck and carefully loading me onto a stretcher. My vitals were concerning blood pressure, dropping, pulse, erratic pupils, unequal in size. As they wheeled me out, Ashley made one crucial mistake. Following the stretcher, she called out, "This is what you get for being selfish. Maybe now you'll learn." The paramedic nearest her stopped cold, making direct eye contact before deliberately writing something in his notes. Emma broke free from Patricia's gentle hold, running after the stretcher. "Please don't take my mommy. Please." Her desperate cries finally seemed to penetrate my mother's composure. For just a moment, Diane Bennett looked at her granddaughter, really looked at her, and something flickered across her face. Shame recognition. But it passed quickly, replaced by her usual mask of cold control. "The child can stay here," she said to Patricia, as if Emma was a package to be managed rather than a traumatized little girl. "Absolutely not," Robert intervened. "She's coming with us until Child Services determines proper placement." As the ambulance pulled away, Brittany finally emerged from her car, approaching Ashley with her phone still recording. The security footage showed them in animated conversation, Ashley gesturing dramatically while Brittany nodded and smiled. At one point, Ashley actually laughed, mimicking the motion of slamming someone's head down. Inside the ambulance, I remained unconscious as EMTs worked to stabilize me. The initial assessment was grim suspected skull fracture, possible brain bleed, definitive concussion. They radioed ahead to Riverside Medical Center, ironically where I'd been heading for work, alerting the trauma team to prepare for potential emergency surgery. My coworkers later described the shock when they realized the incoming trauma patient was me. Sarah Martinez, my closest friend at the billing department, happened to be near the emergency bay when I was wheeled in. She recognized my worn cardigan first, the one I'd mended multiple times because I couldn't afford a replacement. "Oh my God, that's Miranda," she gasped, following the stretcher as far as security would allow. The trauma team's initial examination confirmed the worst fears. CT scans revealed a linear skull fracture running 4 inches along my temporal bone. While there was no active brain bleed, the severity of the impact had caused significant concussion and swelling. I was lucky, they said later, a slightly different angle could have been fatal. But I wasn't feeling lucky. I was unconscious, fighting through pain that penetrated even the darkness. While my daughter was traumatized, my sister was planning her social media spin, and my mother was more concerned about scandal than my survival. The police arrived at my parents' house within an hour, responding to Robert Johnson's formal complaint. Officer Derek Williams, a veteran with 20 years on the force, later said he knew immediately something was off. Ashley had changed clothes, washing away any blood evidence. My mother claimed not to remember exactly what happened despite being feet away, and Brittany insisted she'd just arrived and seen nothing, unaware that multiple security cameras had recorded her presence. It was an accident. Ashley maintained her story, evolving with each telling. First I'd tripped, then I'd slipped, then we'd been playfully wrestling, and things got out of hand. But Emma's clear, consistent account never wavered. Aunt Ashley pulled Mommy's hair and pushed her head on the floor really hard. There was a big crack sound, and Mommy wouldn't wake up. As I lay unconscious in a hospital bed, machines monitoring my damaged brain, the wheels of justice slowly began to turn. What Ashley didn't know was that her carefully constructed image was about to crumble in ways she'd never imagined. The security footage, witness testimonies, and medical evidence would paint a picture that no amount of Botox could smooth over. But first, I had to survive. And when I finally woke up, I would face a choice that would define not just my future, but Emma's as well. Let this become another family secret buried under money and manipulation, or fight back against the people who were supposed to love and protect me. The attack was over. The real battle was about to begin. Consciousness returned slowly, like swimming up through thick, dark water. The first sensation was pain, a deep, throbbing agony that seemed to pulse with my heartbeat. Then came the sounds, rhythmic, beeping, distant voices, the whisper of air through ventilation systems. My eyes felt weighted with lead, but I forced them open, blinking against the harsh fluorescent lights. "Miranda, oh, thank God you're awake." The voice belonged to Sarah Martinez, her familiar face coming into focus as she leaned over the bed rail. Dark circles shadowed her usually bright eyes, and her hospital billing department badge was askew, as if she'd been here far too long. I tried to speak, but my throat felt like sandpaper. Sarah quickly helped me take small sips of water through a straw, her movements gentle and practiced. "Don't try to talk yet. You've been unconscious for 3 days." 3 days. The reality hit like a physical blow. "Emma," I managed to croak. Sarah's expression tightened. "She's safe. She's with Jake's mother, Grace. I know that's probably not what you want to hear, but..." "My parents..." The words scraped out painfully. Sarah's silence spoke volumes. She busied herself adjusting my blanket, avoiding eye contact. "Let me get Dr. Patterson. He'll want to know you're awake." As she hurried out, I took inventory of my situation. My head was wrapped in bandages, an IV dripped steadily into my arm, and monitors tracked various vital signs. The hospital gown felt thin and exposing a far cry from the professional clothes I should have been wearing to work. How many shifts had I missed? How would I pay for all this? Dr. Patterson arrived within minutes, a tall man with prematurely gray hair and kind eyes, behind wire-rimmed glasses. He introduced himself as the head of neurology, which sent fresh anxiety through me. If the head of neurology was handling my case, how bad was the damage? Ms. Bennett, I'm glad to see you're awake. You gave us quite a scare. He pulled up a rolling stool sitting at eye level rather than looming over me. Do you remember what happened? The memories crashed back in vivid detail. Ashley's rage, the grip on my hair, the marble floor rushing up. My sister, she attacked me. He nodded gravely. That aligns with what witnesses reported. Miranda, I need to show you some scans and discuss your injuries. Are you feeling up to that? I nodded, though the movement sent fresh waves of pain through my skull. Dr. Patterson pulled up images on a tablet pointing to areas of concern. You have a linear skull fracture here running along your temporal bone. It's what we call a simple fracture. The bone is broken, but hasn't shifted. You're very fortunate. A few inches in either direction, or if the impact had been slightly stronger, we could be looking at a much different outcome. The clinical words couldn't mask the severity. My sister had fractured my skull. The same sister I'd protected from playground bullies, helped with homework and covered for when she snuck out in high school. There's significant concussion as well, Dr. Patterson continued. You may experience headaches, dizziness, memory issues, and sensitivity to light and sound for several weeks, possibly months. Full recovery is expected, but it will take time and rest. I can't afford time and rest, I said, panic creeping in. I have to work. Emma's surgery. Miranda. His voice was gentle but firm. You need to focus on healing. Working right now could seriously impede your recovery or even cause additional damage. A soft knock interrupted us. Sarah peered in. The social worker is here if you're feeling up to it. I wanted to say no to hide under the thin hospital blanket and pretend none of this was happening, but Emma needed me to be strong. Send them in. The social worker introduced herself as Linda Reeves, a middle-aged woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, softened by compassionate eyes. She pulled up a chair, creating a small circle of privacy in the sterile room. I've been assigned to your case, Miranda. I understand this is overwhelming, but I need to ask some questions about your home situation and the events leading to your hospitalization. As I recounted the attack, Linda took careful notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, she set down her pen with a troubled expression. I need to share something with you. This isn't the first report we've received about your sister. My heart skipped. What do you mean? 3 years ago, a complaint was filed by someone named Jennifer Walsh. She reported that Ashley Bennett assaulted her during a dispute at Northwestern University. The case was closed when the complainant suddenly withdrew her statement and left school. The room spun slightly, though, whether from the concussion or shock I couldn't tell. I never knew about that. There's more, Linda continued carefully. Dr. Patterson flagged some concerning patterns in your medical history. Would you be comfortable discussing previous injuries? Dr. Patterson pulled up my medical records on his tablet. Miranda, I'm seeing a broken wrist from 2008 documented as a fall downstairs, a dislocated shoulder in 2013, reportedly from slipping on ice, various bruises and contusions over the years, all with explanations that in retrospect raise red flags. The memories flooded back, each injury suddenly recontextualized. The broken wrist when I was 16, Ashley had shoved me during an argument about borrowing my car without permission. I'd tumbled down 3 steps, landing hard on my hand. My parents insisted we tell the hospital I'd simply been clumsy. The dislocated shoulder happened at my college graduation party. Ashley, drunk and jealous of the attention I was receiving, had yanked me backward by my arm when I tried to leave her dramatic scene. The pop of my shoulder leaving its socket had sobered everyone instantly. But again, my parents smoothed it over. We couldn't let people think badly of Ashley. She was just emotional about her big sister leaving for the real world. I never thought of it as a pattern. I admitted, tears burning my eyes. She was just Ashley. Dramatic, emotional. Everyone always said she'd grow out of it. Abusers rarely grow out of it without intervention, Linda said gently. And from what I'm seeing, your parents enabled rather than addressed the behavior. Sarah, who'd been quietly listening, suddenly spoke up. I've been documenting things for 2 years. She pulled out a small notebook from her purse. Every time Miranda came to work with unexplained bruises, every story about Ashley's demands, every guilt trip from her parents, I started keeping track because I was worried. I stared at my friend in amazement. You did that for me. I watched my cousin go through something similar. Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. By the time anyone took it seriously, it was too late. I wasn't going to let that happen to you. Linda accepted the notebook, scanning through pages of dated entries. Her expression grew increasingly grim. This is very helpful. Miranda, I need to ask, where is Emma's father in all this? Jake left 2 years ago, moved to California with another woman. He sends child support sporadically when he remembers. And your parents refused to take Emma after your injury. The betrayal stung fresh. Apparently, they told Grace they couldn't handle a child right now. Too much stress with everything happening. Dr. Patterson interjected, I was here when your parents visited yesterday. Your mother's first words weren't asking about your condition. She said, and I quote, I hope you're satisfied with the mess you've created. The words hit harder than Ashley's attack. Even now, even with me lying in a hospital bed with a fractured skull, I was somehow the problem in their eyes. There's something else, Linda said carefully. Emma provided a statement to the responding officers. She was very clear and consistent about what she witnessed, but she also mentioned that Ashley has been visiting her school. My blood ran cold. What when I never authorized that? According to Emma, Ashley would show up during lunch periods. She told Emma things like, your mommy loves work more than you, and if mommy really cared, she'd buy you nice things like I would. Rage, pure, protective, maternal rage coursed through me. Bad enough that Ashley targeted me, but to go after my child, to try to poison her against me, that crossed a line I didn't even know existed. We need to talk about pressing charges, Linda said. The police have gathered substantial evidence. The neighbor's security footage clearly shows the assault. There are witnesses. Emma's statement is compelling. And now, with this documentation and the medical evidence, you have a strong case. The decision should have been easy. Ashley had fractured my skull. She'd traumatized my daughter. She'd been systematically abusing me for years while my parents looked the other way or actively enabled her. But decades of conditioning held me back. Good families didn't air their dirty laundry. Good daughters didn't send their sisters to jail. What would happen to her? I asked quietly. That would depend on the charges and the court's decision. But Miranda, I need you to understand something. This isn't about punishment. It's about safety, yours and Emma's. Ashley's behavior is escalating. This time, it's a skull fracture. Next time, she didn't need to finish. Next time could be fatal. For me, or God forbid for Emma, if she got in Ashley's way during one of her rages. I need to think, I said, exhaustion washing over me. Of course, but Miranda. While you're thinking, consider this. What message does it send Emma if you don't protect yourself? What does she learn about how women should be treated? After they left, I lay in the quiet room, machines beeping steadily around me. My phone, which Sarah had charged and brought from my apartment, showed dozens of messages. Most were from coworkers expressing concern. A few were from Jake's mother, Grace, assuring me Emma was safe and sending photos of her playing with Grace's golden retriever. But scattered among them were messages from my family. My father's were brief, businesslike. Call when you're able. We need to discuss this situation. As if my fractured skull was a business merger gone wrong. My mother's messages were longer, each one a masterpiece of manipulation. I'm disappointed you're dramatizing this accident. Ashley is distraught. You've really hurt her. I hope you're prepared for the consequences of involving outsiders in family business. And then there were Ashley's messages sent before she'd apparently been advised to stop contact. They ranged from fake concern, "Hope you're feeling better, so sorry about the misunderstanding," to threats. "If you ruin my life over this, I'll make sure Emma knows exactly what kind of person you are," to bizarre attempts at normalcy. "Can you still lend me the money? The Botox appointment is Tuesday." I deleted them all. That evening, Sarah returned with real food soup from my favorite deli and fresh bread. As we ate, she filled me in on what I'd missed. The story had spread through our hospital like wildfire. Co-workers I barely knew had contributed to a fund to help with my medical bills. My supervisor had assured HR that my job would be waiting when I recovered. "And there's something else," Sarah said carefully. "That woman who was with Ashley Brittany Colton. She tried to sell the video." I nearly choked on my soup. "What?" She apparently contacted several gossip sites trying to auction footage of what she called an epic sister showdown. But when they realized how serious the injury was, most backed off. One site posted a clip before taking it down, but someone screen-capped it. Sarah showed me her phone. The image was grainy, but clear enough. Ashley standing over my unconscious form, that satisfied smile on her face, while my blood spread across my parents' perfect marble floor. "She looks happy." I whispered the last of my denial crumbling. "She fractured my skull, and she looks happy about it." "I'm so sorry, Miranda, but maybe this is evidence you needed to see, to really understand what you're dealing with." That night, I made my decision. Not for revenge, not for punishment, but for Emma. For the little girl who deserved to grow up knowing that violence is never acceptable, that family doesn't mean accepting abuse, and that her mother would fight to keep her safe. I called Linda Reeves and said 5 words that would change everything. "I want to press charges." The war was about to begin, but this time I wouldn't be fighting alone. The morning after I decided to press charges, my parents arrived at the hospital like storm clouds rolling in before a hurricane. I heard my mother's voice in the corridor first, that cultured tone she used when speaking to people she considered beneath her, demanding to know why she had to sign in like a common visitor. I gripped the bed rails, steeling myself for what was coming. Sarah had offered to stay, but I'd sent her home. This was a confrontation I needed to face alone, though I kept the nurse call button close at hand. They entered my room with the same energy they'd brought to hostile business negotiations, my father in his tailored suit. Despite it being Saturday, my mother in designer wear that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. Neither carried flowers or cards. They weren't here to comfort their injured daughter. Miranda. My father's voice held the same disappointment he'd used when I'd announced my pregnancy with Emma unmarried and barely out of college. "I hope you're satisfied with the chaos you've created." The accusation shouldn't have surprised me, but it still stole my breath. "I created Ashley fractured my skull." "Ashley is distraught," my mother interjected, settling into the visitor's chair like a queen holding court. Her perfectly manicured fingers gripped her designer purse, the same hands that had taught me to tie my shoes, but had never once defended me from my sister's violence. "She hasn't eaten in 3 days. She can't sleep. The stress of possibly facing charges is destroying her." "She fractured my skull," I repeated slowly, as if speaking to children who couldn't grasp basic concepts. "She attacked me in front of my daughter. She could have killed me." My father's jaw tightened the way it did when a business deal wasn't going his way. "It was an unfortunate accident. Ashley explained everything. You two were arguing, things got heated, you slipped." "Stop." The word came out sharper than intended, but I was done being gaslit. "There's security footage from the Johnsons. Multiple witnesses. Emma saw everything. We all know exactly what happened." My mother's composure cracked slightly, a flash of something annoyance, fear crossing her features before she smoothed it away. That sweet couple next door, they've always been prone to exaggeration. And Emma, well, children often misremember traumatic events. I'm sure with the right therapy, she'll recall things more accurately. The implication hung in the air like poison gas. They wanted me to coach my daughter to lie to gaslight a 6-year-old into doubting her own memories to protect Ashley. The rage that built in my chest was unlike anything I'd felt before, pure, protective, maternal fury. "Get out!" My voice was deadly quiet. "Both of you, get out before I call security." "Don't be dramatic." My mother sighed the same phrase she'd used my entire life to minimize my feelings. "We're trying to help you see reason. Do you really want to destroy your sister's life over a momentary loss of temper? Think about her future." "What about Emma's future?" I shot back. "What about teaching her that assault has consequences, that she doesn't have to accept violence from anyone, including family?" My father stood his business face fully in place now. "If you proceed with these charges, you're on your own. No family support, no help with Emma, no assistance with these medical bills, nothing." "I've been on my own since Jake left," I reminded them. "You haven't helped with Emma once. You've never offered to help with bills. What exactly would I be losing?" The silence that followed was telling. They'd played their biggest threat card and it had landed flat. What power did they have when they'd never actually supported me anyway? My mother stood as well, smoothing invisible wrinkles from her skirt. "I suppose we should mention that Ashley is considering filing countercharges for assault. She has injuries too, you know, scratches from where you attacked her." I almost laughed at the absurdity. "Defensive wounds from when I tried to stop her from ripping my hair out. Good luck with that." "She also mentioned you've been stealing from her." My mother continued her tone conversational but eyes calculating. "Accessing her trust fund without permission. We've been looking into some suspicious withdrawals." Now I did laugh, though it hurt my head. What trust fund? What withdrawals? I can barely access my own checking account, and you think I've been stealing from Ashley? My father cleared his throat. "Certain irregularities have come to light. Money that should have been in your college fund that seems to have disappeared over the years. We may need to investigate where it went." The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. They were manufacturing evidence, creating a paper trail of theft to use against me. But their poker faces weren't as good as they thought. "You mean the college fund you told me was depleted after my sophomore year?" I asked carefully. "The one you said had poor returns on investment?" Something flickered across my father's face. "Investment returns are complex." "Did Ashley have a college fund too?" I interrupted. "Same amount, same investment strategy?" Their silence was deafening. My mother's fingers tightened on her purse handle, while my father suddenly found the heart monitor fascinating. The truth crystallized with painful clarity. They'd been stealing from my future to fund Ashley's present all along. "How much?" I asked quietly. "How much of my college fund went to Ashley?" "That's not relevant to the current situation," my father said stiffly. "It's theft," I countered. "You stole from your own daughter to fund the other's shopping sprees and plastic surgery, and now you're trying to frame me for the same crime." My phone buzzed on the bedside table. My mother, always one to seize an opportunity, grabbed it before I could react. 37 missed calls? My goodness, Miranda, that seems excessive?" Her face paled as she read the screen. "Give me my phone." I held out my hand, but she was already backing away, horror dawning in her eyes. "Riverside Community Bank," she breathed. "Why are they calling you?" "My phone, now." I used the same tone I used when Emma was misbehaving, and surprisingly, it worked. My mother handed over the device as if it had burned her. The voicemail was brief but devastating. Someone had attempted to access my savings account, the one with Emma's surgery fund, using my social security number and other personal information. The bank had frozen the account pending investigation, but not before $3,000 had been successfully withdrawn. $3,000, the exact amount Ashley had demanded for her Botox. "You gave her my information," I said, staring at my parents in disbelief. "You gave Ashley my social security number, my account information. You helped her steal from Emma's surgery fund." "We did no such thing," my mother said, but her protest lacked conviction. Behind her, my father was already pulling out his phone, likely calling their lawyer. "She must have seen your documents when she visited," he offered weakly. "You know how careless you are with paperwork." "I haven't lived at home in 8 years," I reminded them. "The only way she could have my current information is if you gave it to her. From taxes, maybe. From the forms you had me fill out last year for that supposed family investment opportunity. The family investment that never materialized. The paperwork they'd insisted I complete for estate planning. I'd been so stupid, so eager for any sign they considered me truly part of the family's financial future." "Your phone's recording," my father noticed, suddenly seeing the voice memo app open on my screen. His face flushed with anger. "You're recording us, your own parents." "My own parents who were trying to frame me for theft while admitting to stealing my college fund," I corrected. "My own parents who were standing in my hospital room with a skull fracture their other daughter caused trying to threaten and manipulate me into dropping charges. Yes, I'm recording. My lawyer advised it." "Lawyer." My mother's voice pitched higher. "You've already hired a lawyer without discussing it with family." "What family?" The words burned coming out. "The family that watched Ashley hurt me for years and called it sibling rivalry. The family that stole my education money. The family that gave my violent sister my banking information. That family—" A knock interrupted us. Catherine Brennan entered, the attorney Sarah had contacted on my behalf. Mid-40s with sharp eyes and an air of complete confidence, she took in the scene with one sweeping glance. "Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, I'm Catherine Brennan, representing Miranda, in all matters related to the recent assault and any subsequent issues that may arise." She handed them each a business card with the same precision a warrior might unsheathe a sword. "I'd advise you to direct all future communication through counsel. Any attempts at direct contact with my client could be construed as witness intimidation." My mother laughed a brittle sound like breaking crystal. "This is ridiculous. We're her parents." "Parents who may be accessories after the fact to assault and theft," Catherine replied smoothly. "I'd strongly suggest you leave now, and Mr. Bennett. Whatever financial manipulation you're planning regarding those trust funds, I'd reconsider. Financial forensics have come a long way. Paper trails are remarkably revealing." The look my parents exchanged was loaded with years of shared secrets and mutual protection. But for the first time, I saw fear there too. They'd always operated in a world where money and influence could make problems disappear. Catherine Brennan clearly wasn't part of that world. "This isn't over," my father said, reverting to his boardroom intimidation voice. "You're destroying this family, Miranda. When Ashley's life is ruined, when she can't recover from this, that's on you." "No." I said, finding strength I didn't know existed. "When Ashley chose to slam my head into marble, that was on her. When you chose to enable her violence for 24 years, that was on you. I'm just finally choosing Emma and myself over your toxic dysfunction." They left without another word, my mother's heels clicking against the linoleum like a countdown to war. Catherine waited until their footsteps faded before pulling up a chair. "Well," she said with a grim smile, "they just made our case significantly stronger. Attempting to access your bank accounts, admitting to financial impropriety with your college fund. Your recording will be very useful." "Will Emma really have to testify?" The thought of putting her through that made my stomach churn. "Possibly, but we have strong evidence without traumatizing her further. The security footage is damning. Your medical records paint a clear pattern, and now we have evidence of financial crimes as well." She pulled out a tablet, all business. "I've been investigating Ashley's background. The woman at Northwestern who withdrew her complaint, Jennifer Walsh. She's willing to testify now. Your parents paid her $20,000 to go away, but she's carried guilt about enabling Ashley ever since. $20,000 to silence Ashley's victim, while they told me my college fund was depleted. The betrayals kept compounding like interest on a debt I never knew I owed." "There's more," Catherine continued. "2 other women from Ashley's brief college attempts. A roommate with a concussion, another girl whose credit cards Ashley stole. Your parents made it all go away with money and threats. How many people has she hurt? I whispered, overwhelmed by the scope of it. That we know of, at least 7, including you. But Miranda, here's what's important. You're the first one with the courage and resources to fight back. You're giving all her victims a voice. That night, alone again in my hospital room, I processed everything. My parents had literally funded my sister's violence while stealing from my future. They'd created a monster and fed her with my dreams, my education, my security. Every time they'd told me I was overreacting, too sensitive, too dramatic, it had all been calculated to keep me silent and compliant, while Ashley got whatever she wanted. My phone rang. Grace Jake's mother was video calling so Emma could say goodnight. My daughter's face filled the screen and my heart simultaneously broke and soared. She looked tired but safe, cuddled with Grace's golden retriever. "Hi, baby," I managed, keeping my voice light. "Are you being good for Grandma Grace?" "Yes, Mommy. When can I see you? Grandma Grace says you have a big ouchie on your head." "Soon, sweetheart. The doctors are taking really good care of me." Emma bit her lip, a habit she'd picked up from me. "Mommy, I told the truth to the police lady about what Aunt Ashley did." "Was that okay?" Grandma Diane called and said I might be confused, but I'm not confused. I saw what happened. My mother had called my 6-year-old daughter to try to manipulate her memory. The rage that filled me was pure and clean and powerful. "You did exactly right, baby. Always tell the truth. I'm so proud of you for being brave." "Grandma Grace says being brave means doing the right thing even when you're scared," Emma said solemnly. "Like you, Mommy, you're brave." After we said our good nights and I love yous, I lay in the darkened room and made myself a promise. I would be brave. Not the fake brave I'd been for years pretending everything was fine while my family destroyed me piece by piece. Real brave. The kind that stands up to bullies even when they share your blood. The kind that teaches daughters that love without respect is just control wearing a prettier mask. Ashley thought she'd won when she cracked my skull against that marble floor. My parents thought they'd won by holding their financial support hostage. But they'd all miscalculated one crucial thing. They'd finally pushed me past the point of caring what they thought. The war for my dignity, my daughter's future, and justice for all of Ashley's victims was just beginning. And for the first time in my life, I was ready to fight without apology. Catherine Brennan arrived at my hospital room the next morning carrying 2 coffee cups and a leather briefcase that looked like it meant business. She handed me one of the cups herbal tea, noting my concussion, and settled into the visitor's chair with an efficiency that suggested she'd done this many times before. "Miranda, I've spent the night reviewing everything." She began pulling out a legal pad covered in neat handwriting. "The criminal case against Ashley is strong, but I want to discuss our full legal strategy. This isn't just about the assault anymore." I sipped the tea gratefully, its warmth a comfort against the clinical cold of the hospital. "What do you mean?" "Your parents' visit yesterday opened several new avenues. The theft from your bank account, the admission about your college fund, their attempts to intimidate you. We're looking at a pattern of financial abuse that goes back years." She flipped through her notes. "But first I need to tell you what I've discovered about Ashley's juvenile record." My hand stilled on the cup. "Her what?" Catherine's expression was grim. "Your parents did an excellent job of burying it, but court records still exist. When Ashley was 15, she attacked a classmate named Melissa Chen with a field hockey stick. The girl needed 16 stitches and suffered a concussion. Your parents paid the family an undisclosed sum, I'm working on getting the exact amount, and had the record sealed." The room spun slightly, though, whether from my concussion or this revelation I couldn't tell. I remember that year. They told me Ashley was at a wellness retreat for stress. She was gone for 3 months. She was in a juvenile facility for 45 days, followed by mandated therapy that your parents terminated early against medical advice. Catherine showed me a document on her tablet. The therapist's notes are telling. She diagnosed Ashley with conduct disorder and warned that without continued treatment, the behavior would escalate. Your parents' response was to threaten legal action if the therapist didn't destroy her notes. but she didn't. She kept encrypted copies concerned about future victims. She's been waiting 17 years for someone to ask the right questions. Catherine leaned forward. Miranda, your sister, has been violent since adolescence, and your parents have been covering it up just as long. You're not her first victim, you're just the first one they couldn't pay off or threaten into silence. A knock interrupted us. Detective Marcus Rodriguez entered, looking like a man who'd seen too much, but still cared enough to do his job right. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe mid-30s, with kind eyes that missed nothing. Miss Bennett, I'm sorry to meet you under these circumstances, he said, shaking my hand gently. How are you feeling? Like someone fractured my skull, I replied, attempting humor that fell flat. He nodded sympathetically. I've been assigned as lead investigator on your case. I've reviewed the security footage, witness statements, and medical reports. I want you to know I'm taking this very seriously. Domestic violence, even between siblings, is still violence. The validation in those simple words nearly broke me. After years of being told I was too sensitive, dramatic overreacting here was someone acknowledging the simple truth: violence is violence. I've already interviewed the Johnsons. Your neighbor Patricia was particularly helpful. Detective Rodriguez continued. She documented several incidents over the past 2 years when you visited your parents. Raised voices, you leaving in tears, one instance where she saw Ashley throw something at your car. I remembered that day. Ashley had hurled a potted plant at my windshield because I'd refused to lie to our parents about her latest credit card debt. The pot had shattered, leaving scratches on my hood that were still there. Your daughter's statement was remarkably clear and consistent, he added. I've worked with child witnesses for years. Emma knows what she saw, and she's not confused or coached. Her details match the physical evidence perfectly. Catherine interjected, What about the other involved party, Brittany Colton? The detective's expression darkened. Ms. Colton is proving interesting. She initially claimed she'd just arrived and saw nothing. When we showed her the security footage proving she'd been there for 30 minutes, she changed her story. Now she says she was filming for Ashley's modeling portfolio, and things got out of hand. She tried to sell the footage, I said, anger flaring fresh. Which is why we're charging her as an accessory. She had foreknowledge of a planned assault and not only failed to intervene but attempted to profit from it. He pulled out his phone, showing me a screenshot. She posted this on her private Instagram an hour before the attack. The post showed a selfie of Brittany and Ashley captioned, "About to watch karma get served. Some people need to learn their place." She knew, I breathed. They planned this. The premeditation strengthens our case significantly, Catherine noted, typing rapidly on her tablet. This moves it from heat of the moment to calculated assault. Detective Rodriguez stood to leave but paused at the door. Ms. Bennett, I know family cases are complicated. There will be pressure to drop charges to handle this privately, but I want you to know what your sister did was wrong. What your parents are doing is wrong. You deserve justice, and so does your daughter. We'll make sure you get it. After he left, Catherine and I spent 3 hours going through everything. She'd assembled a timeline of Ashley's violence going back to childhood, using my medical records, Sarah's documentation, and information from other victims who'd come forward. The pattern was undeniable and chilling. Age 7. Broke Miranda's piggy bank parents sided with Ashley. Age 11, pushed Miranda downstairs, claimed accident. Age 15, attacked classmate with hockey stick parents, paid for silence. Age 18, assaulted college roommate parents, paid for silence. Age 20, stole roommate's credit cards, parents paid restitution. Age 22, gave another roommate a concussion. Parents threatened lawsuit to silence victim. Age 24, fractured Miranda's skull. Each incident got worse, I observed, seeing it laid out so starkly. Escalation is typical when consequences are avoided, Catherine explained. Your parents didn't just enable her, they taught her that money could erase any crime, but attempted theft of surgical funds for a sick child, premeditated assault with video evidence. Even their money can't make this disappear. We turned to the immediate legal needs. Catherine had already filed for an emergency restraining order preventing Ashley and my parents from contacting Emma or me. She'd frozen my bank accounts to prevent further theft and started the process of recovering the stolen $3,000. "I also want to discuss something delicate," she said carefully. "Your ex-husband, Jake, he reached out to my office." My stomach clenched. What does he want? To help, apparently. He says he has information about Ashley that might be relevant. Claims she harassed him during your marriage, made advances, tried to sabotage your relationship. He's willing to testify if needed. Jake voluntarily offering to help was as surprising as my parents' betrayal was predictable. Why would he do that? He says he's been in therapy working through his issues. He feels guilty about abandoning you and Emma, especially knowing what Ashley was capable of. Catherine studied my face. It's your choice whether to include his testimony, but corroboration of Ashley's pattern of behavior could be valuable. I thought about Jake, about the marriage that had crumbled under pressures I was only now beginning to fully understand. How much of our problems had been real, and how much had been Ashley's poison dripping into our relationship. Set up a meeting. I decided, but only with you present. I want to hear what he has to say. That afternoon, I had an unexpected visitor. Grace Chen, Jake's mother, arrived carrying a small suitcase and a determined expression. Despite sharing a surname with Ashley's teenage victim, they weren't related. Grace was Korean American, had kept her maiden name professionally, and had always been more of a mother to me than my own. "Miranda, honey," she said, setting down the suitcase. "I brought you some real clothes and toiletries. Hospital gowns are so undignified." "How's Emma?" I asked immediately. "Thriving. She's teaching my neighbor's kids that board game you got her for Christmas, the one with the rabbits." Grace sat on the bed's edge, taking my hand. "She misses you terribly, but she's strong, like her mother." "Grace, I'm so sorry you got dragged into this." "Stop," she interrupted gently. "Your family, real family. When Jake told me what happened, what Ashley did," her usually calm demeanor cracked. "That woman has been a poison in your life since I met you. I watched her ruin your baby shower, your wedding, countless family dinners. I should have spoken up sooner." "What do you mean, ruin?" Grace sighed. "Your baby shower. Ashley showed up 2 hours late drunk wearing white, a wedding dress. She claimed it was a joke. She gave a speech about how pregnancy ruined women's bodies and tried to kiss Jake in front of everyone. You were so embarrassed you left early from your own party." The memories surfaced hazily. I'd blocked out so much, normalized so many of Ashley's disruptions that they'd become background noise in my life. "Your wedding," Grace continued. "She pretended to faint during your vows. Claimed the heat got to her, but I saw her practicing the fall in the bathroom mirror beforehand. Then at the reception, she gave that horrible toast about how marriage was a trap, and you were stealing Jake from better options." Each revelation was another piece clicking into place. Ashley hadn't just been a difficult sister, she'd been systematically sabotaging every milestone, every joy in my life. "Jake wants to see you," Grace said carefully. "He's been sober 18 months. The therapy has helped him see how toxic your family dynamic was, how it affected your marriage. He's not asking for forgiveness or reconciliation. He just wants to help make this right for Emma." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. Catherine's name flashed on the screen. "Miranda, I need you to check your social media. Don't respond to anything, just look." With trembling fingers, I opened Facebook. My timeline was flooded with posts from Ashley, each more unhinged than the last. Photos of us as children with captions about how I'd always been jealous. Fabricated stories about me stealing from her, bullying, her trying to seduce her boyfriends. She'd even posted the video Brittany took edited to start after she grabbed my hair, making it look like I was the aggressor. But the comments weren't going the way Ashley expected. Instead of sympathy, people were asking pointed questions. "Why were you filming before the fight started? Isn't Miranda in the hospital with a skull fracture? This looks edited. Where's the beginning?" Team Ashley. "Really, your sister could have died." Catherine was already on it. I'm documenting everything for harassment charges. She's violating the restraining order with these posts. This actually helps our case, shows consciousness of guilt attempting to manipulate public opinion. That evening, I made another crucial decision. When Sarah arrived for her daily visit, I asked her to help me write a post of my own. Not to attack or defend, just to state facts. I'm currently hospitalized with a skull fracture. My daughter witnessed the assault. I'm grateful for the medical care I'm receiving and for the support of true friends and family. I ask for privacy as we navigate the legal process. To those who've reached out with similar stories, you're not alone. Violence is never acceptable, even from family, especially from family. Within hours, the post had hundreds of shares. Messages poured in from people I hadn't heard from in years, many sharing their own stories of sibling abuse, family violence, and the conspiracy of silence that protected abusers. A woman named Jennifer Walsh sent a particularly moving message. I was Ashley's first victim in college. Your parents paid me to stay quiet. I've regretted it every day since. Thank you for being braver than I was. I'm ready to testify. As night fell and the hospital quieted, I lay in my bed, processing everything. In trying to destroy me, Ashley had inadvertently revealed the scope of her violence. In trying to threaten me, my parents had exposed their own crimes. In abandoning me, they'd freed me to find my real family, Sarah Catherine Grace, even the strangers offering support and solidarity. Tomorrow would bring more challenges. The criminal case would proceed. The financial crimes would be investigated. The restraining orders would be enforced. And somehow, through all of it, I'd have to heal both physically and emotionally while being the mother Emma deserved. But tonight, for the first time in my life, I felt the power of truth. No more secrets. No more covering for Ashley. No more accepting blame for being her victim. The legal system would hold her accountable in ways our parents never had. The truth will set you free, my grandmother used to say. I'd never understood it until now. The truth was painful, messy, complicated, but it was also liberation from 28 years of gaslighting and abuse. Ashley thought fracturing my skull would silence me. Instead, it had given me the loudest voice I'd ever had, and I was finally ready to use it. Detective Rodriguez's investigation moved with a thoroughness that both impressed and terrified me. 3 days after our initial meeting, he returned to my hospital room with a thick folder and an expression that suggested he'd uncovered more than expected. Miranda, I need to walk you through what we've found. He began settling into the visitor's chair. Some of this might be difficult to hear. I adjusted my position in the bed, the movement sending a spike of pain through my still healing skull. I'm ready. He opened the folder, revealing printed screenshots and transcripts. We executed a search warrant on Brittany Colton's devices. What we found goes beyond documenting one assault. She and Ashley had been planning this for weeks. The first screenshot showed a text conversation dated 3 weeks before the attack. Ashley, she said no again. I'm so over her holier-than-thou attitude. Brittany, maybe you need to be more persuasive. Ashley, what do you mean? Brittany, remember that influencer who staged that fight with her sister? Went viral, got a reality show offer. Ashley, OMG, yes, but it needs to look real. Brittany, I'll film. You just do your thing. Make it dramatic. My stomach churned. They planned to hurt me for internet fame. Initially, yes, but the messages evolved. He showed me more screenshots. 2 days before the assault, the tone changed. Ashley started talking about teaching you a lesson, making you understand your place. Brittany encouraged it suggested your parents' house because of the marble floors. She specifically mentioned the marble. My voice cracked. Those floors would make a great sound on video. Direct quote. His jaw tightened. They researched head injuries, Miranda. Browser history shows searches for how hard to hit someone to knock them out and head trauma that looks worse than it is. Catherine, who'd arrived during this revelation, interjected sharply. That's conspiracy to commit assault with premeditation. We're looking at potential felony charges. Detective Rodriguez nodded. It gets worse. Brittany tried to shop the footage to several outlets. TMZ, Daily Mail, even some darker websites that specialize in real violence content. When mainstream sites refused, she got desperate. He produced printed emails that made my blood run cold. Brittany had marketed the video as "Rich Sister Gets What She Deserves" and "Spoiled Brat Learns Hard Lesson." She'd completely reversed our roles, painting me as the wealthy aggressor and Ashley as the struggling victim. Most sites recognized the legal liability and declined, the detective continued. But one gossip blog posted a clip before removing it. We've subpoenaed their records. Brittany was paid $800 for exclusive rights to footage of you being assaulted. She sold my trauma for $800, I said numbly. She tried to sell it for much more. She started at $10,000. He pulled out another document. This is where it gets interesting. When arrested, Brittany immediately turned on Ashley. Full cooperation in exchange for lesser charges. She's provided us with recordings of conversations, planning sessions, even practice runs. Practice runs? He pulled out a tablet, queuing up a video. This was taken a week before the assault. I want to warn you, this might be disturbing. The video showed Ashley and Brittany in what looked like Brittany's apartment. Ashley was practicing hair-pulling techniques on a mannequin head, discussing angles and force. They laughed as the mannequin toppled over repeatedly. Again, but angrier. Brittany directed from behind the camera. Remember, it needs to look spontaneous but photograph well. I can't believe she'd do this to me over some stupid cosmetic procedure money. Ashley complained in the video. $3,000 is nothing to her. She's just being spiteful because I'm prettier. I paused the video, unable to watch more. She really believes that I have money hidden away that I'm denying her out of jealousy. Your parents fed that narrative, Catherine observed. Every time they covered for her, paid her debts, they reinforced her delusion that money was infinite and you were withholding it. Detective Rodriguez moved to the next phase of evidence. We've also been investigating the financial crimes. The $3,000 withdrawn from your account, Ashley used it immediately for her cosmetic appointments. But that's not all she took. My heart sank. What else? Small withdrawals over 6 months. 50 here, 100 there. Always just under the amount that would trigger fraud alerts. Total of approximately $4,700 before the final $3,000. Nearly $8,000 stolen, the exact amount I needed for Emma's surgery. The coincidence was too perfect to be random. She knew, I breathed. She knew exactly how much I'd saved. Your mother admitted during questioning that Ashley had asked about your financial situation. She told Ashley about the surgery fund, thinking it would make her more understanding. He shook his head. Instead, Ashley saw it as money being wasted on Emma instead of given to her. A knock interrupted us. A young officer entered, whispered something to Detective Rodriguez that made his expression darken further. We just arrested Ashley at your parents' house, he informed me. She did not go quietly. He pulled up body cam footage on his tablet. The video showed officers approaching my parents' front door, my father answering in his silk pajamas, despite it being mid-afternoon. The conversation was polite until they asked for Ashley. She appeared in the foyer like an avenging angel in designer athleisure, immediately launching into a tirade about harassment and false accusations. When Officer Williams moved to arrest her, she grabbed a crystal vase, one of my mother's precious collectibles, and hurled it at his head. He dodged, but the vase shattered against the doorframe, sending shards everywhere. "Stop recording," Ashley screamed, noticing the body cam. "This is illegal. I know my rights." "Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent," Officer Williams began, but Ashley wasn't interested in silence. She lunged at him, nails aimed at his face, screaming about lawsuits and ruined lives. It took 3 officers to subdue her, and even then she managed to kick Officer Patterson in the shin hard enough to leave him limping. My parents' reactions were almost as telling as Ashley's violence. My mother stood frozen, not in shock at her daughter's behavior, but in horror at the public spectacle. My father immediately began offering bribes. "This can all go away, officers. Name your price," which only added attempted bribery charges to their problems. That's assaulting an officer resisting arrest and attempted bribery by proxy. Catherine tallied. Your sister just made our case airtight. But the most damning evidence came from Ashley herself. In her purse, officers found what Detective Rodriguez called a revenge journal. Page after page of perceived slights, planned retaliations, and fantasies of violence. My name appeared frequently, but I wasn't her only target. Listen to this entry from last month, the detective read. Miranda thinks she's so perfect with her sick kid and her 2 jobs. She'll see. When I'm famous and she's begging for help, I'll laugh in her face. Maybe I'll hire her as my assistant, make her fetch my coffee. Or maybe I'll just make sure Emma knows what a loser her mother really is. Emma's name in that journal made my maternal instincts roar. She was planning to hurt my daughter. Emotionally, at least. There are several entries about teaching Emma the truth and saving her from Miranda's influence. Combined with the school visits Linda Reeves mentioned, it paints a picture of systematic harassment. The investigation had also uncovered Ashley's modeling career fraud. She'd been telling people she was signed with elite models, even creating fake booking confirmations and photoshopped magazine covers. Several small businesses had given her free products and services based on promises of exposure from a working model. It's a pattern of deception that goes beyond family, Detective Rodriguez explained. We've had 12 businesses come forward claiming she obtained goods and services through fraud. Your assault was just the most violent culmination of entitled behavior that's been escalating for years. As they prepared to leave, the detective turned back. Miranda, I've worked a lot of domestic violence cases. Family violence is often the hardest to prosecute because victims feel guilty drop charges protect their abusers. I want you to know you're doing the right thing. Your daughter is watching. You're teaching her that violence has consequences, that she deserves safety and respect. Don't let anyone make you doubt that. That afternoon, I had my first video call with Jake since the separation. Catherine sat beside me, ensuring everything remained appropriate and documented. Jake looked different, clearer somehow, like someone had washed years of grime off a window. Miranda, I'm so sorry, he began, and for once the apology sounded genuine. Not just for leaving, but for not protecting you from Ashley when we were together. What do you mean? I asked carefully. He took a deep breath. She made passes at me constantly. At our wedding reception, she cornered me in the coat room, tried to kiss me, said you'd never have to know. When I rejected her, she got vicious, started telling me lies about you cheating with coworkers, showed me photoshopped pictures of you with other men. You believed her. The betrayal stung fresh. Not at first, but she was relentless. Every family dinner, every holiday, she'd whisper poison. And your parents... He shook his head. They'd make comments about how Ashley was more fun, how you were too serious, how maybe I'd chosen the wrong sister. It wore me down, made me doubt everything. So you left us for a 22-year-old, I said flatly. I left because I was weak and stupid and let your toxic family convince me I deserved better than a loyal wife and beautiful daughter. His voice cracked. I've been in therapy for 18 months. I know I can't undo the damage, but I can testify about Ashley's behavior, provide evidence of her harassment. I have texts, emails, even a voicemail where she propositioned me while you were in labor with Emma. Catherine leaned forward. You saved these. My therapist advised me to, said keeping evidence of abuse is important, even when you're not ready to act on it. He met my eyes through the screen. Miranda, I know I failed you and Emma, but let me help make this right. Let me help put Ashley away so she can't hurt you anymore. After the call ended, I sat in silence, processing the layers of betrayal. Ashley hadn't just attacked me physically, she'd spent years attacking my marriage, my stability, my entire life. And my parents had enabled it all, probably hoping I'd crumble and become as dependent on them as Ashley was. That evening, the news broke. Local woman arrested for assault on sister video surfaces. Read the sanitized headline, but social media was less kind. Ashley's mugshot went viral. Her perfectly contoured face twisted in rage. Mascara, streaking hair extensions askew. Someone had made a meme comparing her expression to a rabid raccoon, and it spread like wildfire. The comment sections became a battlefield. Ashley's few genuine friends defended her, claiming mental health issues and family persecution, but they were drowned out by former victims' witnesses to her past behavior, and businesses she'd defrauded all coming forward with their stories. My phone buzzed constantly with messages of support, interview requests, and offers from attorneys wanting to represent me in civil suits. Catherine fielded them all, keeping me focused on healing and the criminal case. As visiting hours ended and the hospital quieted, I realized the investigation had revealed more than just evidence. It had revealed the truth about my entire life. Every struggle, every moment of self-doubt, every failed relationship had Ashley's fingerprints on it. She'd been systematically destroying me for years, and I'd been too conditioned to see it. But now the world could see it. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable, public. Ashley's mask had finally slipped, revealing the violence and entitlement underneath. And for the first time in 28 years, she would face consequences she couldn't charm, lie, or manipulate her way out of. The investigation was complete. Now came the harder part, staying strong through a trial that would pit me against the family I'd once desperately wanted to please. But with each piece of evidence, each testimony of support, each message from survivors who'd found courage in my story, my resolve grew stronger. Ashley had fractured my skull, but she'd failed to break my spirit, and that failure would cost her everything. The child psychology specialist's office was designed to feel safe and welcoming, with soft colors and toys scattered strategically around the space. But no amount of child-friendly decor could ease the knot in my stomach as I waited outside while Emma met with Dr. Patricia Hernandez, the forensic interviewer assigned to our case. It had been 2 weeks since the attack. I'd been released from the hospital 3 days ago and was staying with Sarah, who'd converted her home office into a bedroom for Emma and me. My daughter had been quieter than usual, processing trauma in the way children do, through play, through dreams, through sudden bursts of questions at unexpected moments. Catherine sat beside me in the waiting room reviewing notes. Dr. Hernandez is the best in the state, she assured me. She specializes in interviewing child witnesses in a way that's both legally sound and emotionally protective. I hate that Emma has to do this, I whispered, fighting back tears. She's 6. She should be worried about loose teeth and learning to ride a bike, not testifying about family violence. You're protecting her by doing this, Catherine reminded me gently. Imagine if Ashley remained free to escalate. What might she do next time? Through the small window in the door, I could see Emma sitting at a child-sized table drawing with markers, while Dr. Hernandez sat nearby, letting her settle in. My daughter looked so small, so vulnerable, yet she held herself with a dignity that broke my heart. After 40 minutes that felt like hours, Dr. Hernandez emerged, her expression professionally neutral, but kind. Emma did wonderfully, she said, leading us to a separate consultation room. Before we discuss her statement, I want to assure you that she showed no signs of coaching or confusion. Her account was clear, consistent, and age-appropriate in its language and understanding. She pulled out her notes, handled with the same care you'd use for precious documents. Emma provided a detailed account of the assault. She remembered specific sequences: you arriving, Ashley blocking the door, the argument about money, Ashley grabbing your hair, and the impact. She even recalled sensory details: the sound of your head hitting the floor, the smell of Ashley's perfume, the feeling of blood being sticky when she tried to wake you. My hand flew to my mouth. She touched the blood. She was trying to help you, Dr. Hernandez said gently. She told me I learned in school that you press on owies to stop bleeding, so I put my hands on Mommy's head. She's a very brave little girl. Catherine was taking rapid notes. What about the school visits Ashley made? Dr. Hernandez's expression darkened. This is where things become concerning. Emma disclosed that Ashley had been visiting her at lunch for several months, always when you were at work. The visits started friendly. Ashley would bring her treats small toys, but they progressively became more manipulative. She consulted her notes. According to Emma, Ashley told her things like, "Your mommy loves work more than you. If mommy really loved you, she'd give me money to be pretty. And most disturbingly, maybe you should come live with me when you're older. I'd be more fun than mommy." Rage flooded through me, hot and pure. She was trying to alienate my daughter from me. Classic grooming behavior, Dr. Hernandez confirmed. Building trust, creating secrets, positioning herself as the preferable alternative. Emma said Ashley made her promise not to tell you about the visits, saying it would hurt mommy's feelings. "How did the school allow this?" I demanded. Catherine answered, "We're investigating that. Apparently, Ashley was listed as an emergency contact from when Jake left, and she convinced staff she was picking Emma up for family lunches with permission." Dr. Hernandez continued, "Emma also revealed something else significant. The morning of the assault wasn't the first time she'd seen Ashley be violent with you. She described several incidents Ashley pushing you at Christmas dinner, throwing a shoe at you at Emma's birthday party, and pulling your hair during an argument about money last summer. Each incident came flooding back. Christmas dinner, when Ashley had shoved me into the kitchen counter because I'd received a nicer gift from our parents, a gift card versus the cash she got. Emma's 5th birthday, when Ashley threw her designer heel at my head because I'd asked her not to curse in front of the children. The summer argument when she'd yanked my ponytail because I wouldn't co-sign a loan for her. I always minimized it, I said quietly, made excuses, told Emma that Aunt Ashley was just having a bad day. "Children see more than we think," Dr. Hernandez said kindly. "Emma told me mommy always says Ashley is having bad days, but I think Ashley just likes hurting people. She's remarkably perceptive." The interview had also revealed how the attack had affected Emma. She'd been having nightmares where Aunt Ashley hurts mommy again and no one stops her. She'd become hypervigilant, checking locks repeatedly and asking if doors were secure. She'd started hiding her favorite toys, afraid Ashley would take them like she took mommy's money from the computer. "She knows about the theft?" I asked, surprised. "She overheard you on the phone with the bank. Children are always listening even when we think they're not paying attention." Dr. Hernandez leaned forward. "Miranda Emma is showing signs of post-traumatic stress, which is normal given what she witnessed. I'm recommending therapy with a specialist in childhood trauma. With proper support, children are remarkably resilient." "What about testifying?" Catherine asked. "Will Emma need to appear in court?" "I'm recommending against it if at all possible," Dr. Hernandez replied. "Her recorded interview is clear and compelling. Combined with the physical evidence and adult witnesses, it should be sufficient. However, if absolutely necessary, we can arrange for closed-circuit testimony to avoid her having to face Ashley directly." As we prepared to leave, Dr. Hernandez pulled me aside. "There's one more thing Emma said that I think you should hear. She told me, 'I was scared when Aunt Ashley hurt mommy, but I'm not scared now because mommy is being brave and making sure Ashley can't hurt us anymore.' Your daughter sees you as her hero, Miranda. Remember that when this gets difficult." Emma was coloring in the waiting room playpen when we emerged, watched over by a gentle assistant. When she saw me, she ran into my arms, careful of my still tender head. "Mommy, I drew you a picture." She held up a drawing of 2 figures holding hands under a rainbow. "That's you and me being safe and happy." "It's beautiful, baby." I managed through the lump in my throat. In the car, Emma was quiet for several blocks before speaking. "Mommy, the nice doctor lady asked me about when Aunt Ashley visits my school." "What did you tell her?" "The truth. Like you always say, telling the truth is important even when it's scary." She fidgeted with her seatbelt. "I didn't like keeping secrets from you. Aunt Ashley said you'd be mad if you knew about our lunches, but that wasn't true, was it?" No, sweetheart, I would never be mad at you for spending time with family. I'm only upset that she asked you to keep secrets. Emma nodded solemnly. She's not very nice, Mommy. She says mean things about you, and she smells too strong. And she called Ms. Johnson fat, which is a mean word we don't use. Children's honesty could be brutal and beautiful simultaneously. You don't have to see Aunt Ashley anymore if you don't want to, I assured her. Good, Emma said decisively. I don't like people who hurt my mommy. That's not what family does. That evening after Emma was asleep, I sat with Sarah and Catherine reviewing the interview transcript. The detail in Emma's account was both heartbreaking and powerful. She'd noticed things I hadn't even realized, the way Ashley had smiled after the impact, how Grandma Diane had seemed more worried about the blood on her floor than about me, how Grandpa Frank had immediately started talking about lawyers instead of calling for help. She's gonna be okay, Sarah said, squeezing my hand. She's got you, and you're breaking the cycle. She's learning that violence has consequences, that she deserves protection, that speaking truth is brave. But the interview had revealed something else that gnawed at me. Emma had mentioned other incidents I'd forgotten or blocked out, times when Ashley's violence had been subtle enough to gaslight away. The accidental elbow to my ribs at Thanksgiving, the playful shove that sent me into the pool fully clothed at a family barbecue, the joke chokehold that lasted a few seconds too long at my college graduation. Each incident isolated seemed minor, but together they painted a picture of systematic abuse that I'd been conditioned to accept. And Emma had been watching, learning, absorbing the message that hurting family members was normal if done with a smile and a laugh. No more, I said aloud, startling both Sarah and Catherine. This ends with me. Emma will never think violence is acceptable, will never be taught to minimize abuse, will never learn to make excuses for people who hurt her. The forensic interview would become a crucial piece of evidence, but more importantly, it had given Emma a voice. She'd spoken her truth to someone who listened, believed, and validated her experience. It was more than I'd had at her age when my parents dismissed Ashley's early violence as sibling rivalry. As I checked on Emma one more time before bed, I found her sleeping peacefully, the picture she'd drawn clutched in her hand. 2 figures under a rainbow, safe and happy. It wasn't our reality yet, we were still in the storm. But storms pass, rainbows appear, and little girls who speak truth grow into strong women who change the world. The legal battle would be brutal. The family fallout would be devastating. But looking at my daughter's peaceful face, I knew every fight would be worth it. Emma deserved a life free from violence, manipulation, and toxic secrets. And I would give her that life even if it meant losing the family I'd been born into to protect the family I'd chosen. 2 days after Emma's interview, I was folding laundry in Sarah's guest room when my phone erupted with notifications. Text after text, call after call, all variations of the same message. Turn on the news. Did you see what happened? Ashley's arrest is everywhere. With trembling hands, I grabbed the remote and switched on the local news. The footage was surreal, a breaking news banner reading, "Local woman arrested for assault attacks officers," played under shaky helicopter footage of my parents' house surrounded by police cars. Sarah rushed in from the kitchen. "Miranda, are you watching this?" The news anchor's voice filled the room. "We're following breaking news from Westwood Heights, where 24-year-old Ashley Bennett was arrested this afternoon on charges of assault, theft, and conspiracy. The situation escalated when Bennett allegedly attacked officers during the arrest. We go now to our reporter on the scene." The camera cut to a young reporter standing at the end of my parents' driveway, the familiar mansion looming behind her. "Thanks, Janet. What started as a routine arrest turned violent when Ashley Bennett refused to comply with officers and became physically aggressive. We've obtained exclusive footage from a neighbor's security camera." The grainy footage showed 3 police cars pulling up to the house. Officers approached the door calmly, professionally. My father answered, his body language shifting from annoyance to alarm as they explained their purpose. Then Ashley appeared, and even from a distance, her rage was visible. My phone rang Detective Rodriguez. "Miranda, I wanted to warn you that footage of the arrest is circulating. Are you somewhere safe?" "I'm watching it on the news right now," I said, unable to look away from the screen. "We didn't anticipate media attention this quickly. Are you prepared for this to be public?" On screen, the footage showed Ashley grabbing something the crystal vase and hurling it at an officer. Even without audio, you could see her screaming the violence in every movement as officers tried to subdue her. "She did this to herself," I said, surprising myself with my steadiness. "I'm not hiding anymore." The news coverage continued with witness interviews. Mrs. Patterson from next door looking shaken but determined. "I've lived here 30 years. That family always seemed perfect from the outside, but we heard things, saw things. That poor older daughter Miranda, she tried so hard to keep peace. But you can't keep peace with violence." The reporter revealed more details. Ashley had barricaded herself in her room after the initial confrontation, live streaming on Instagram, ranting about persecution and jealous sisters. The stream had been saved by viewers before she deleted it, and clips were already viral. Catherine arrived as they played excerpts from Ashley's live stream. My sister looked unhinged, makeup-smeared hair, wild, screaming into her phone camera. "This is what jealousy looks like," Ashley shrieked in the clip. "My own sister trying to destroy me because she can't stand that I'm beautiful and she's just a pathetic single mother. She probably hurt herself for attention. You all know me. Would I hurt anyone?" The comments scrolling beneath the video told a different story. Former classmates, co-workers from her brief employment attempts, and service workers from places she frequented all shared stories of Ashley's violence entitlement and cruelty. "She threw hot coffee at me because I put too much foam on her latte," one comment read. "She keyed my car for getting a promotion she wanted at a job she'd already quit," read another. "I dated her for 2 weeks. She broke my laptop when I didn't text back fast enough. Run, Miranda, run." The arrest footage continued. After the live stream officers had used a negotiator to convince Ashley to come out, she emerged wearing designer workout clothes, full makeup, despite the chaos she'd actually taken time to prepare for her arrest, like it was a photo shoot. The officer she attacked, Officer Williams, sustained minor injuries. The reporter continued. "We've learned Bennett is also facing charges of assault on a peace officer resisting arrest and destruction of property." The camera panned to my parents' front door where my mother stood speaking to another group of officers. Even from a distance, her rigid posture screamed displeasure, not at Ashley's behavior, but at the public spectacle. My phone rang again. This time, it was Grace Jake's mother. "Miranda Emma just saw something about her aunt on the TV at the community center. I got her out of there quickly, but she's asking questions." My heart sank. I'd hoped to shield Emma from the media circus, but in the age of 24-hour news and social media, that was impossible. "Bring her home," I said. "I'll explain in an age-appropriate way." While I waited for them to arrive, more details emerged. The body cam footage had been released due to a procedural error, making it public record before anyone could seal it. The full video was even more damning than the news clips. Ashley's words during the arrest were clear. "Do you know who I am? My father owns half this city. You'll all be unemployed by tomorrow. That bitch is lying about everything. She's always been jealous of me." When Officer Williams tried to handcuff her, she spat at him, kicked Officer Patterson, and tried to scratch Officer Chen's face. It took 3 officers to get her into the patrol car, and even then she managed to damage the interior by kicking the seats and window. "That's our tax dollars at work," Sarah said grimly. "She damaged city property during her tantrum." Catherine was fielding calls from reporters while simultaneously taking notes. "The media attention actually helps us," she said between calls. "Public pressure makes it harder for the DA to offer lenient plea deals. Ashley's behavior today eliminated any sympathy she might have garnered." When Emma arrived, I sat her down gently, choosing my words carefully. "Sweetheart, you might hear some things about Aunt Ashley being in trouble with the police." Emma nodded solemnly. Chloe at the center said she saw Aunt Ashley on TV being bad to police officers. Is that why I can't see her anymore? Aunt Ashley hurt me, and that's against the law, I explained simply. When people break laws, there are consequences. The police are making sure she can't hurt anyone else. Good, Emma said firmly. In school, we learned that if someone hits you, you tell a trusted adult and they get in trouble, even if they're family. The wisdom of first graders never ceased to amaze me. As the day progressed, the story exploded across social media. The hashtag Ashley Bennett, arrested, began trending locally. More victims came forward with stories of Ashley's violence and manipulation. A Facebook group called Ashley Bennett Survivors gained over 1,000 members in 3 hours. My phone rang constantly. Reporters, distant relatives, old friends who'd heard the news. Catherine advised me to stay silent for now, but I did agree to one thing, a statement released through her office. My focus remains on healing and ensuring my daughter's safety. I'm grateful to law enforcement for their professional handling of this situation, and to the many people who've offered support. Violence is never acceptable regardless of family relationships. I hope my sister gets the help she clearly needs. That evening, the evening news led with the story again. They dug deeper, uncovering Ashley's history of violence through public records and interviews. The Northwestern incident, previously buried, was now public knowledge. Jennifer Walsh had given an interview describing her assault and the subsequent cover-up by my parents. They offered me $20,000 to stay quiet, Jennifer said, looking directly at the camera. I was 18, scared and alone. I took it. But seeing Miranda stand up to them, seeing her refuse to be silenced, I can't stay quiet anymore. The news also revealed that Brittany Colton had been arrested as an accessory. Her mugshot showed none of Ashley's defiance, just a scared young woman realizing that internet fame wasn't worth criminal charges. Jake called that evening, his voice tense. I saw the news. Are you and Emma okay? We're safe, I assured him, staying with Sarah. Miranda, I need to tell you something. Ashley called me last week before the arrest. She wanted me to lie to say you'd been violent with her in the past. She offered... He paused. She offered to sleep with me if I'd testify against you. The revelation shouldn't have shocked me anymore, but it did. What did you say? I recorded the call and sent it to your attorney, he said. I may have failed you as a husband, but I won't fail Emma as a father. She deserves to grow up without Ashley's poison in her life. As I hung up, I reflected on the day's events. Ashley's arrest had been everything. She was dramatic, violent, performative. She'd treated it like a reality show audition rather than the serious consequences of her actions. But the cameras she'd always craved had finally captured her true self, a violent, entitled woman who believed wealth and beauty placed her above the law. The public nature of her arrest meant no more covering up, no more family secrets, no more protecting the Bennett family image at my expense. Ashley had destroyed that image herself on camera in front of the entire city. That night, as I tucked Emma into bed, she asked, Mommy, why did Aunt Ashley hurt those police officers? Some people think rules don't apply to them, I explained. But everyone has to follow rules no matter who they are or how much money they have. Emma considered this, like how everyone has to wait their turn on the slide even if they think they're special. Exactly like that baby. As she drifted off to sleep, I realized that Ashley's public meltdown had given me an unexpected gift vindication. No one could claim I was exaggerating or being dramatic when the evidence of Ashley's violence was playing on every news channel and social media platform. The girl who'd lived for attention had finally gotten it, just not the kind she'd wanted. And for the first time in my life, I felt no obligation to protect her from the consequences of her own choices. The arrest video would follow her forever, a permanent record of who Ashley Bennett really was beneath the designer clothes and cosmetic enhancements. She'd wanted to go viral, she'd wanted fame, she'd wanted the world to see her as special. Be careful what you wish for. The Facebook notification came at 6 in the morning, 3 days after Ashley's arrest. Sarah was making breakfast while Emma watched cartoons, and I was nursing my first cup of coffee when my phone buzzed. The message was from someone named Megan Hartley, a name I didn't recognize. Hi, Miranda, you don't know me, but I was Ashley's roommate at DePaul before she dropped out. I saw the news about her arrest, and I need to tell you you're not alone. She gave me a concussion in 2019. Your parents paid me $15,000 to stay quiet. I have receipts. My hands shook as I typed back, "Would you be willing to speak with my attorney?" Within minutes, Megan replied with an enthusiastic yes and Catherine's contact information. By the time I'd finished my coffee, 3 more messages had arrived from women I'd never met, all with similar stories about Ashley. Catherine called an hour later, her voice energized. "Miranda, I've been fielding calls all morning. The media coverage of Ashley's arrest has opened floodgates. We have over a dozen people willing to testify about her violence." A dozen. I sank into Sarah's couch, overwhelmed. And counting. I need you to come to my office. Some of these women want to meet you. I arranged for Emma to spend the day with Grace and headed to Catherine's downtown office. The conference room was already occupied. When I arrived, 5 women of varying ages, all with the same look in their eyes I saw in my own mirror. The look of someone who'd been victimized and gaslit into silence. Catherine made introductions. Megan Hartley, 26, auburn hair and nervous energy. Jennifer Walsh, who I'd heard about but never met. Lisa Chen, no relation to Officer Chen, who Ashley had attacked during arrest. Rachel Torres, who'd worked with Ashley at a boutique for exactly 3 days. And Samantha Brooks, whose story made my blood run cold. She was my best friend in high school. Samantha began, her voice steady but her hands clasped tightly. I thought her outbursts were just teenage drama. Then junior year I got picked for varsity cheerleading and she didn't. She cornered me in the locker room with a field hockey stick. My stomach dropped. The Melissa Chen incident. Samantha looked confused. No, this was a year before that. She broke 2 of my ribs and gave me a black eye. Her parents showed up at the hospital with a check for my family and an NDA. $25,000 for my silence. Wait, Jennifer interjected. I thought I was her first serious assault. The Melissa Chen thing at Northwestern. Lisa shook her head. She attacked me in middle school, slammed my head into a cafeteria table because I got a better grade on a science project. Her parents donated a new computer lab to the school, and suddenly I was clumsy and had fallen. The room fell silent as we all processed the pattern. Ashley had been violently attacking people since childhood, and our parents had been covering it up for over a decade. Catherine pulled out a timeline she'd been constructing. Based on what we've gathered so far, Ashley has violently assaulted at least 19 people that we know of, starting from age 11. Your parents have paid out approximately $300,000 in hush money over the years. $300,000, I whispered. They told me they couldn't help with Emma's medical bills. Megan leaned forward. She wasn't just violent with me, she drugged me. The room's attention snapped to her. I started feeling drowsy whenever I drank anything in our room. I thought I was just stressed from classes. Then one night, I pretended to drink the smoothie she made me, but poured it out. I stayed awake and caught her going through my wallet, taking my credit cards. When I confronted her, she attacked me with a hair straightener. The burn scars are still here. She rolled up her sleeve, revealing puckered skin on her forearm. She stole my identity, Rachel added. Opened 3 credit cards in my name during the 2 days we worked together. I'm still dealing with the credit damage 4 years later. Catherine was documenting everything, her legal pad filling with notes. Would you all be willing to testify? Every woman nodded without hesitation. That afternoon, the Facebook group Ashley Bennett Survivors had grown to over 3,000 members. The stories poured in like a dam had burst. Retail workers she'd assaulted, restaurant staff she'd attacked, Uber drivers she'd threatened, classmates, co-workers, neighbors, all with similar tales of violence, theft, and manipulation. One post particularly stood out from a woman named Diana Morse. Ashley Bennett destroyed my small business. She commissioned $5,000 worth of custom jewelry for her modeling portfolio. then claimed they were defective and demanded a refund. When I refused, she started a smear campaign online with fake reviews. I had to close my store. Seeing her arrested felt like justice finally catching up. The local news picked up on the Facebook group that evening. They interviewed several members, their faces blurred for privacy, but their voices clear and angry. "She's been a predator in this community for years," one woman said. "Everyone in certain circles knew to avoid her, but no one spoke up because the Bennett family had money and influence." The reporter also revealed that local businesses had begun sharing security footage of Ashley's behavior. A compilation video showed her throwing drinks at baristas, knocking over displays in boutiques, and screaming at service workers. Each incident alone might have seemed like a bad day, but together they painted a picture of sustained terrorization of the service industry. My phone rang constantly. Reporters wanted statements, prosecutors wanted testimonies. But the call that surprised me most came from someone unexpected, my childhood friend Kelly, who disappeared from my life when we were 17. "Miranda, I saw the news. I'm so sorry I abandoned you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Ashley threatened my family when I tried to stand up for you. She said she'd tell everyone my dad was having an affair, which he was, and destroy my parents' marriage if I didn't stop being your friend. I was 17 and scared. I chose protecting my family over our friendship, and I've regretted it ever since." Another piece of my isolated life clicked into place. She drove away my friends. Not just me. Remember how your whole friend group gradually distanced themselves? Senior year, Ashley had dirt on everyone real or fabricated. She systematically isolated you so you'd have no support system. The manipulation went deeper than I'd ever imagined. Ashley hadn't just attacked me physically, she'd orchestrated my social isolation to ensure I'd have nowhere to turn. That evening, Catherine called an emergency meeting. The DA's office is taking this very seriously now. With 43 people willing to testify about Ashley's violence and criminal behavior, they're considering enhanced charges. This isn't just simple assault anymore, we're looking at potential racketeering charges for the pattern of paying off victims. Racketeering against my parents, too? Possibly. They've been operating a criminal enterprise essentially covering up violent crimes, bribing victims, intimidating witnesses. The fact that they stole from your college fund to finance this makes it even worse. As I drove back to Sarah's house, I passed my old high school. On impulse, I pulled into the parking lot, memories flooding back. How many violent incidents had happened here? How many victims had been silenced with Bennett money? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop this now or you'll regret it. You have no idea what we're capable of." I screenshot it and forwarded it to Catherine immediately. Within minutes, she replied, "That's witness intimidation. Keep documenting everything." When I got home, Emma ran to greet me, chattering about her day with Grandma Grace. As I listened to her innocent joy, I thought about all of Ashley's victims, particularly the young ones like Lisa, attacked in middle school and taught that violence could be bought away. That night, after Emma was asleep, I joined the Facebook group myself. I wrote a simple post. "I'm Miranda Bennett Ashley's older sister and recent victim. For 28 years, I made excuses for her violence. I normalized it, minimized it, and enabled it through my silence. I'm sorry for everyone she hurt while I looked the other way. Thank you for your courage in speaking up. Together we're ensuring she can't hurt anyone else." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Hundreds of comments poured in support, shared pain, and most importantly, stories of how speaking up had helped them heal. Some had been carrying their trauma for over a decade, believing they were alone. By midnight, 3 local news stations had picked up the story of the Facebook group. The headline had shifted from "Local Woman Arrested for Assault" to "Alleged Pattern of Violence, Spanning Decades Emerges Against Bennett Family." Ashley had wanted to be famous, to be known, to have everyone talking about her. She'd achieved that goal, just not how she'd envisioned. She wasn't a beautiful influencer or successful model. She was the face of privileged violence, the poster child for what happens when wealth enables cruelty. As I finally headed to bed, my phone showed one last notification. It was from Detective Rodriguez. Wanted you to know, based on the community response and evidence gathered, the DA is filing 37 separate charges against Ashley. Your courage in speaking up gave dozens of others the strength to do the same. That's how change happens. I thought about the timeline Catherine had showed us: 19 confirmed violent assaults over 13 years, hundreds of thousands in hush money, countless lives disrupted or destroyed, all because two parents couldn't say no to their violent child. But now the community was saying no, loudly, publicly, and in unity. Ashley's reign of terror was over, and from the ashes of her destruction, a community of survivors was rising, ready to ensure that no amount of money could buy silence anymore. The revelation was complete. Westwood Heights would never look at the Bennett family the same way again. And somewhere in a jail cell, Ashley was learning that all the Botox in the world couldn't smooth over the ugly truth of who she really was. The preliminary hearing arrived on a gray March morning that matched my mood perfectly. I dressed carefully in the navy suit Sarah had helped me pick out, professional but not severe, confident but not aggressive. Emma was safely at school with strict instructions to the staff about who could and couldn't pick her up. Catherine met me outside the courthouse, her presence reassuring. Remember, today is just to determine if there's enough evidence for trial, but with 43 witnesses and mountains of documentation, that's essentially guaranteed. The courthouse steps were crowded with media. Someone had leaked the hearing date, and reporters clustered like hungry wolves. We pushed through Catherine, deflecting questions with practiced ease. Inside the courtroom, I saw my family for the first time since that hospital visit. My parents sat behind the defense table, my mother in designer black, as if attending a funeral for her reputation. My father's face was stony, his businessman's mask firmly in place, but it was Ashley who drew my attention. She'd clearly prepared for her appearance like a movie premiere. Professional hair and makeup couldn't quite hide the orange tint of jail clothing, but she'd tried. She sat between two attorneys, not one, but two high-priced lawyers my parents had hired. When she saw me, her carefully composed expression flickered, revealing pure hatred before smoothing back into practiced innocence. "Don't look at her," Catherine whispered. "She wants to intimidate you." The courtroom filled quickly. I recognized many faces from the Facebook group women who'd driven hours to witness Ashley finally face consequences. Jennifer Walsh sat 2 rows behind me, offering a supportive nod. Megan Hartley was there, as were several others who'd shared their stories. Judge Patricia Harrison entered, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes that seemed to miss nothing. She reviewed the charges, a litany that took the clerk nearly 5 minutes to read. Assault with intent to cause serious bodily harm, theft, identity fraud, conspiracy, witness intimidation. The list went on. Ashley's lead attorney, Richard Blackwood, stood first. "Your Honor, this is clearly a case of sibling rivalry blown out of proportion. My client is a young woman with no prior criminal record." "Objection!" The prosecutor, ADA Michael Torres, interrupted. "The defendant has an extensive juvenile record that was sealed." Judge Harrison's eyebrows rose. "We'll be examining that record in chambers, Mr. Blackwood. Continue." Blackwood recovered smoothly. "Ms. Bennett has strong community ties, no flight risk, and these allegations are largely based on hearsay and vindictive claims from individuals with personal grievances." "Your Honor." ADA Torres stood again. "We have video evidence, medical documentation, and 43 witnesses prepared to testify about a pattern of violence spanning over a decade." 43. Judge Harrison's voice sharpened. "Mr. Torres, please elaborate." What followed was a masterclass in prosecution. Torres methodically presented evidence, the security footage of my assault officer Williams' body cam footage of Ashley attacking him, financial records showing the theft from my account. But the most damaging was a compilation video created from various security cameras around town, showing Ashley's violence against service workers over the years. "This isn't an isolated incident," Torres argued. "This is a pattern of escalating violence enabled by wealth and privilege. The defendant believed she was above the law. The people of this state deserve to see that no one is. When Torres called his first witness, I was surprised to see Robert Johnson, my parents' neighbor, who'd called 911. The retired firefighter took the stand with military bearing. "Mr. Johnson, please describe what you witnessed on February 15th. Torres began. Robert's testimony was devastating in its clarity. He described hearing Emma's screams, finding me unconscious in blood, Ashley standing over me with a smile on her face, and my mother's cold response to her injured daughter. In my 30 years as a first responder, Robert said, looking directly at the judge, I've seen a lot of domestic violence. This was one of the most callous displays I've witnessed. The defendant showed no remorse, no concern. She actually seemed pleased with herself. Blackwood tried to cross-examine, suggesting Robert was elderly and might have misremembered. Robert's response was sharp, "Son, I may be 72, but I know the difference between accident and assault. I know what blood spatter from impact looks like versus a fall, and I certainly know what a smile looks like on someone who's just fractured their sister's skull." The judge called for a recess after Robert's testimony. In the hallway, I was approached by several women from the Facebook group. "We're here for you," Lisa Chen said simply. "Whatever happens, you're not alone anymore." When court reconvened, something unexpected happened. During a discussion about bail, my mother suddenly stood up. "Your Honor, may I speak?" Judge Harrison looked surprised but nodded. "This is irregular, Mrs. Bennett, but proceed." My mother walked to the witness box, her designer heels clicking on the floor. For the first time in my life, she looked old, not elderly, but worn down by the weight of years of denial. "I need to tell the truth," she began, her cultured voice wavering. Blackwood jumped up. "Mrs. Bennett, I strongly advise—" "Sit down, Richard," my mother snapped with some of her old fire. She turned to the judge. "Your Honor, I've been a terrible mother. When Ashley was 5, she fell from playground equipment while I was distracted on a business call. The doctor said there was no permanent damage, but I blame myself. I've spent 19 years trying to make up for that moment of inattention." The courtroom was silent, everyone leaning forward. I convinced myself every violent outburst was my fault. Every time she hurt someone, I paid them off and told myself it was protecting her from the consequences of my failure. Her voice cracked. But sitting here, hearing about all these victims, I didn't protect Ashley. I created a monster, and I sacrificed my older daughter to feed that monster's appetites. She looked at me for the first time in years, really looked at me. Miranda tried to tell us. She begged us to get Ashley help. We called her dramatic, jealous, difficult. We stole from her college fund to pay off Ashley's victims. We isolated her from friends who might have supported her. We made her question her own sanity when she was the only one telling the truth. "Mom," Ashley hissed from the defense table, her mask finally cracking. "Shut up, what are you doing?" But Diane Bennett wasn't finished. That day in the hospital, when I said good about Miranda's injury, God forgive me, I meant it. For just a moment, I thought maybe, if Miranda was hurt badly enough, she'd stop fighting us about Ashley. That's how twisted I'd become. I looked at my daughter with a fractured skull and thought about how to use it to protect my other daughter from consequences. She turned to Judge Harrison. "Ashley needs to be held accountable. Real accountability, not the fake consequences we've been buying her out of for years. She's violent, she's escalating, and next time she might kill someone. I should know I've been enabling her for 19 years. The courtroom erupted. Ashley screamed obscenities at our mother while Blackwood desperately tried to control his client. My father sat frozen, his business mask finally cracked to show genuine shock. Judge Harrison banged her gavel repeatedly. "Order Mr. Blackwood control your client or she'll be removed." It took 3 bailiffs to restrain Ashley, who was now screaming threats at everyone, me, our mother, the judge, the prosecutors. Her carefully styled hair came undone, her makeup smeared, and the real Ashley emerged for everyone to see. "You're all jealous!" she shrieked as they dragged her toward the holding area. "Jealous, pathetic losers, I'll destroy all of you. Daddy, do something, make them stop." But Frank Bennett seemed to have aged a decade in 10 minutes. He stared at his younger daughter as if seeing her for the first time, then slowly shook his head. After Ashley was removed and order restored, Judge Harrison made her ruling. Based on the evidence presented and the defendant's behavior in this courtroom, I find more than sufficient cause to proceed to trial. Given the violent nature of the crimes, the pattern of behavior, and the clear threat the defendant poses to the community, bail is denied. The gavel came down with finality. As we left the courtroom, my mother approached. Catherine stepped protectively in front of me, but I touched her arm. "It's okay," I said, though I wasn't sure it was. My mother's perfect makeup was ruined by tears. "I don't expect forgiveness, Miranda. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know I'll testify. I'll tell the truth about everything. The money we stole, the victims, we silenced all of it. It's the least I can do." "Why now?" I asked, my voice harder than intended. "Why not 10 years ago, 5 years ago, before she fractured my skull?" "Because I'm a coward," she said simply. "It took seeing all those women in the courtroom, all those victims, to realize the scope of what we'd done. Each one could have been you. Each one was someone's daughter, sister, friend. And we taught Ashley that they were all expendable." She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "This is a check for your college fund, what we stole plus interest. It won't undo the damage, but Emma deserves her surgery without you struggling." I stared at the check, $75,000, more than enough for Emma's surgery and then some, but it felt like blood money. "I'll think about it," I said, not taking the envelope. That evening, the preliminary hearing was all over the news. The footage of Ashley's meltdown, my mother's confession, the judge's denial of bail, it all painted a picture of privilege crumbling under the weight of justice. The Facebook group exploded with celebration and support. Women who'd been silenced for years felt vindicated. Some shared that seeing Ashley dragged away screaming had given them their first good night's sleep since their assaults. Emma was full of questions when I picked her up from school. Some classmates had heard their parents talking about the Bennett family scandal. "Is Aunt Ashley going to jail?" she asked as we drove to Sarah's. "The judge will decide that after a trial," I explained carefully, "but she'll stay in jail until then because she's not safe to be around people." Emma considered this. "Good. Jail has timeouts for grown-ups who don't follow rules, right?" "Something like that, baby." That night, as I tucked her in, Emma said something that broke and healed my heart simultaneously. "Mommy, I'm proud of you for telling the truth. Even when it was scary and made Grandma and Grandpa mad, Ms. Johnson says that's what brave looks like." I kissed her forehead, fighting back tears. "Thank you, sweetheart. Now get some sleep." As I sat in Sarah's living room that night processing the day's events, I realized something had fundamentally shifted. My mother's public confession had shattered the Bennett family facade permanently. There was no going back to pretending we were perfect, no more covering Ashley's violence with money and threats. The trial would be brutal. Ashley's defense team would attack my character, my parenting, my motives. They'd dig up every mistake I'd ever made and weaponize it. But none of that mattered anymore. What mattered was that courtroom full of women who'd found their voices. What mattered was Emma learning that violence has consequences. What mattered was breaking the cycle of enablement that had created Ashley. My mother had asked why I couldn't have stopped this sooner. The truth was, I'd tried. But one voice against a wall of money and denial barely makes a whisper. It took 43 voices shouting together to break through. Now the whole world was listening, and Ashley's reign of terror was finally over. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon exactly 1 week after the preliminary hearing. I was reviewing medical bills when Sarah handed me my phone with a strange expression. "It's Jake," she said quietly. I stared at the phone like it might bite. Jake and I had managed co-parenting communications through text and brief calls about Emma, but he'd requested this conversation be in person with Catherine present. "Miranda." His voice sounded different, clearer than I'd heard it in years. "Thank you for taking my call. I know this is unexpected, but there are things you need to know before the trial. Things about Ashley that I should have told you years ago. 2 days later, I sat in Catherine's conference room watching my ex-husband enter with visible nervousness. Jake looked healthier than he had during our marriage, the puffiness gone from his face, his eyes clear. Sobriety suited him. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," he began, settling across from me. "I know I have no right to ask for your time, but what I have to share could help your case." Catherine clicked on her recorder. "Mr. Bennett, excuse me. Mr. Sullivan, please state your name for the record." "Jacob Andrew Sullivan. I was married to Miranda Bennett from 2015 to 2022. And you're here voluntarily to provide information about Ashley Bennett." "Yes." Jake's hands clasped and unclasped on the table. "I've been sober for 18 months. Part of recovery is making amends, but more importantly, it's about preventing further harm. Ashley is dangerous, more dangerous than even Miranda knows." He pulled out a folder, sliding it across to Catherine. "These are text messages, emails, and voicemails from Ashley spanning our entire marriage. I saved them on the advice of my sponsor, who recognized them as evidence of sustained harassment." Catherine began reviewing the documents, her expression growing increasingly grim. "Jake, can you summarize what we're looking at?" Jake took a deep breath. "Ashley began making advances toward me the night Miranda and I got engaged. She cornered me at the celebration dinner, said Miranda didn't deserve me, and tried to kiss me. When I rejected her, she laughed it off as a joke, but it escalated from there. I felt sick. You never told me." "I was 26 and stupid. I thought I could handle it." He met my eyes with genuine remorse. "I thought telling you would hurt you unnecessarily. Instead, my silence let her poison our marriage from the inside." Catherine pulled out a printed email. "This is dated 3 months after your wedding." Jake nodded. "Ashley sent that after Miranda and I had our first real fight about money. She offered to comfort me, said she understood how difficult Miranda could be about finances. She suggested meeting at a hotel." "What did you do?" I asked, my voice smaller than intended. "I deleted it and avoided her for months, but she was relentless." He gestured to the folder. "Every family gathering, she'd find moments alone with me. Touch my arm, whisper things about how much better she'd treat me. When I kept rejecting her, she changed tactics." Catherine held up another document. "These texts from 2019, she's claiming Miranda is having an affair. She started sending me evidence of Miranda cheating, photos taken out of context, Miranda laughing with a male coworker getting coffee with her boss. She'd add commentary about how naive I was, how everyone knew but me." Jake's voice cracked. "I didn't believe her at first, but when you're already insecure, when your wife is working 2 jobs and you're feeling neglected, that poison starts to seep in. I remembered that period working constantly to cover expenses while Jake struggled to find steady employment, coming home exhausted to accusations and sulking. I thought it was just stress." "Show her the voicemail," Catherine said quietly. Jake pulled out his phone, his face flushed with shame. This was left while Miranda was in labor with Emma. Ashley's voice filled the room, slurred and vicious. "Hey, Jake, just thinking about you while my sister pushes out your brat. You could have had me, you know. I wouldn't have gotten fat and gross. I would have stayed beautiful for you. It's not too late. Meet me in the parking lot. We can have our own celebration while Miranda's distracted. She'll never know. Come on, you know you've thought about it. I've seen how you look at me." The recording ended. Silence stretched between us. "I was in the delivery room with you," Jake said quietly, "holding your hand while our daughter was born, and my phone was buzzing with messages from your sister trying to seduce me. The manipulation, the timing, it was evil." "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, anger finally breaking through shock. "Because you'd just given birth. Because your parents already made you feel inadequate. Because I thought I was protecting you." He laughed bitterly. "Instead, I let her erode our foundation until I was weak enough to betray you anyway. Not with her, God, never with her. But I proved her right in the end. I was weak and I did abandon you for someone younger." Catherine continued reviewing evidence. There were dozens of incidents. Ashley showing up at Jake's workplace with lunch, telling his co-workers she was his girlfriend. Sending lingerie to our house with notes suggesting I'd ordered it for him. Creating fake social media profiles to message him constantly. "This is stalking," Catherine said. "Sustained sexual harassment and stalking. Did you ever report it?" "To who?" Jake asked. "Her parents who bankrolled our wedding. The police who knew Frank Bennett owned half the commercial real estate in town. I was a struggling musician married into the Bennett family. Who would have believed me?" He had a point. The power dynamics were complex and toxic. "There's more," Jake said, pulling out a final document. "This is from my therapy sessions. My therapist helped me recognize the pattern. Ashley wasn't just trying to seduce me. She was systematically destroying our marriage. Every fight Miranda and I had, Ashley had planted seeds for weeks before. She'd tell me Miranda was complaining about me to everyone. Tell Miranda I was lazy and unambitious. She played us against each other like a chess master. I thought back to our worst fights. How many had started with something Ashley said, a casual comment about Jake's music career going nowhere, an observation about how tired I looked, how I was letting myself go. Each remark carefully placed to explode later. The week before I left, Jake continued, his voice rough, Ashley sent me photos, doctored images that looked like Miranda with another man. I knew they were fake, but I was already so paranoid, so convinced everyone was lying to me. When I met Brittany at that music festival, she seemed like an escape from the chaos. I'm not excusing what I did. I was a coward and a fool, but Ashley had been working for years to get me to that point. "Who's Brittany?" I asked, then froze. "Wait, not Brittany Colton." Jake nodded miserably. "Ashley introduced us. Said Brittany was a music promoter who could help my career. I found out later she was Ashley's friend planted there to seduce me. The whole thing was orchestrated." The room spun. Ashley hadn't just tried to steal my husband, she'd actively destroyed my marriage using her friend as a weapon. Catherine set down her pen. "Jake, are you willing to testify to all of this at trial?" "Yes." He met my eyes. "Miranda, I know testifying won't undo the damage I caused by leaving, but maybe it can help show the jury what Ashley really is. She's not just violent, she's calculating. She destroyed our marriage for sport." "For sport," I repeated numbly. "That's what Brittany told me later when she was drunk. Said Ashley bet her $5,000 she could break up our marriage within 2 years. Brittany collected her money the day I moved out." I stood abruptly, needing distance from this revelation. Outside Catherine's window, life continued normally. People walking cars, passing the world spinning on, while mine tilted off axis. "Miranda." Catherine's voice was gentle. "Do you need a break?" "She bet money on destroying my marriage." I turned back to face Jake. "My sister made a game of ruining my life, and you helped her win." "I know." Jake's shoulders slumped. "I've been in therapy twice a week for 18 months trying to understand how I let it happen, how I let her manipulate me into becoming the kind of man who abandons his family. I'm not asking for forgiveness, I don't deserve it, but I want to help stop her from doing this to anyone else." I thought about Emma, about the life we'd built from the ashes of Jake's abandonment, about the nights I'd cried myself to sleep wondering what I'd done wrong, all orchestrated by my own sister. "Fine," I said finally. "Testify. Tell them everything. But Jake, this doesn't make us okay. This doesn't erase the past 2 years of single motherhood of Emma, asking why Daddy doesn't live with us anymore, of struggling to pay bills alone." "I know," he said quietly. "I'm working on being a better father. Grace, Mom, she's been helping me understand the damage I caused. I want to be present for Emma to support you both financially and emotionally. Not because I think it'll win you back, but because it's right." As the meeting concluded, Jake handed me one final item, a check. 18 months of back child support plus interest, he explained, and a separate fund for Emma's therapy. I know money doesn't fix what I broke, but she shouldn't suffer because of my failures. After he left, I sat with Catherine, processing everything. "This changes our approach," she said. "Ashley isn't just impulsively violent, she's a predator who stalks, manipulates, and destroys lives strategically. With Jake's testimony plus the other victims, we can show a pattern of behavior that goes beyond simple assault." That evening, I told Sarah everything. She listened with growing horror as I explained how Ashley had orchestrated my marriage's destruction. "That's sociopathic," Sarah said finally. "Who does that to their own sister?" "Someone who sees people as toys," I replied. "Someone who's never faced consequences." Emma bounced in from playing outside, full of stories about school. As I listened to her chatter, I thought about how Ashley had tried to poison this too, visiting Emma at school, planting seeds of doubt about my love for her. But she'd failed there. Emma's love was pure and fierce and unshakable. Ashley could destroy marriages, reputations, and bodies, but she couldn't destroy the bond between my daughter and me. That night, I called Grace. "Jake told me everything," I said without preamble. "I know," she replied gently. "I've been encouraging him to be honest. Miranda, I'm sorry. I should have seen what was happening. Should have protected you both better." "It wasn't your job to protect me from my own sister." "It was my job to protect my family," Grace said firmly. "And you're my family. You gave me my granddaughter. You tried to make my son a better man. I failed you both by staying silent when I saw the dysfunction." We talked for an hour. Grace shared her own observations of Ashley's behavior, things she'd noticed but hadn't understood at the time. The pattern became clearer with each story. As I prepared for bed, my phone buzzed with a text from Jake. "I know today was hard. Thank you for listening. I promise to do better by Emma. She deserves a father who protects her from people like Ashley, not one who enables them. I'm committed to being that father." I didn't reply, but I saved the message. Maybe someday when the wounds weren't so fresh, we could build something new, not a marriage, but a partnership focused on Emma's well-being. Ashley had bet she could destroy my marriage in 2 years. She'd won that bet. But in winning, she'd revealed herself as something far worse than anyone imagined. Not just violent, but calculating. Not just entitled, but predatory. And now, with Jake's testimony added to the mountain of evidence, she would face consequences that no amount of money could buy her way out of. The trial couldn't come soon enough. The morning of Ashley's trial arrived with unexpected April sunshine that felt almost mocking in its brightness. I dressed carefully in a charcoal gray suit, my hands steady despite the churning in my stomach. Emma had made me a good luck card the night before, a drawing of us holding hands under a rainbow with "Be Brave, Mommy" written in purple crayon. The courthouse was a circus. Media vans lined the street, reporters thrust microphones at anyone who looked connected to the case. The story had evolved from local interest to national news. Wealthy sister's violent rampage and Facebook group exposes years of covered-up crimes had become regular headlines. Catherine met me at a side entrance flanked by security. "Ready?" she asked, though we both knew ready was relative. Inside, the courtroom was packed. The first 3 rows behind the prosecution were filled with Ashley's victims, women who'd driven from neighboring states to witness justice. Jennifer Walsh sat next to Megan Hartley. Lisa Chen was there along with Diana Morse, whose jewelry business Ashley had destroyed. 43 women who'd found their voices and refused to be silenced anymore. My parents sat behind the defense table, my father in an expensive suit that couldn't hide his diminished presence. My mother looked like she'd aged years in the weeks since her courtroom confession. They didn't make eye contact with me. Ashley entered in shackles, and I barely recognized her. The weeks in jail without access to her beauty regimen had revealed the person beneath the polish. Her roots were showing her face bare of makeup, her nails broken and unmanicured. But it was her expression that was most changed, the confident smirk replaced by something feral and cornered. Judge Harrison presided again, her presence commanding respect. The jury selection had been contentious, finding 12 people in our community who hadn't formed opinions about the Bennett family scandal proved challenging. But eventually, a diverse group was seated. Teachers, retail workers, a nurse, a mechanic, people who understood working for a living. Adam Michael Torres opened with a statement that cut straight to the heart of the matter. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case isn't just about assault. It's about a pattern of violence spanning 15 years enabled by wealth and privilege. You'll hear from 43 victims. You'll see financial records showing hundreds of thousands in hush money. You'll watch video evidence of the defendant fracturing her own sister's skull over a request for cosmetic surgery money. But most importantly, you'll see how justice was repeatedly denied until one woman, Miranda Bennett, finally said, "Enough." Richard Blackwood's defense opening was predictable. Ashley was mentally ill, traumatized by a childhood head injury, failed by parents who didn't get her proper help. She wasn't responsible for her actions. Society had failed her. Ashley Bennett is a victim too, he argued. A victim of parental neglect, of untreated mental illness, of a society that values wealth over well-being. Her actions, while regrettable, stem from a place of pain, not malice. I watched Ashley's face during his statement. She nodded along, playing the victim, perfectly occasionally dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue. The prosecution's case unfolded methodically. First came the medical evidence. Dr. Patterson took the stand, explaining my injuries with clinical precision. The skull fracture could have been fatal. Millimeters difference in impact location might have caused permanent brain damage or death. In my professional opinion, he stated this was not a simple push or accidental fall. The force required to cause this fracture pattern indicates deliberate violent action. The security footage played next. The courtroom watched in silence as Ashley grabbed my hair, yanked me down, and slammed my head against marble. The sound of impact echoed in the quiet room. Several jury members flinched. Then came Emma's forensic interview. Judge Harrison had ruled it admissible to spare my daughter from testifying. Her young voice filled the courtroom, describing what she'd witnessed with heartbreaking clarity. When she talked about trying to wake me up about the blood making her hands sticky, one juror wiped away tears. Detective Rodriguez testified about the investigation, presenting Ashley's revenge journal and the evidence of premeditation. The text messages between Ashley and Brittany planning the assault were particularly damning. But the most powerful testimony came from the victims. One by one, 43 women took the stand. Each told their story, the violence, the payoffs, the threats to stay silent. The pattern was undeniable. Jennifer Walsh. She hit me with a field hockey stick because I got elected to student government and she didn't. My parents needed that $20,000 for my siblings' education, but they took it to keep me safe from the Bennetts. Megan Hartley, she drugged me repeatedly, then attacked me with a hair straightener when I caught her stealing. The burn scars are permanent. The Bennetts offered $15,000 for my silence. I was 19 and terrified. Lisa Chen. I was 12 when she slammed my head into a cafeteria table. 12 years old. The school suddenly got a new computer lab and I got a story about being clumsy. Diana Morse broke down, describing how Ashley destroyed her small business. She didn't just want a refund. She wanted to destroy me for daring to stand up to her. She succeeded. 5 years of building my dream gone because I wouldn't bow to a Bennett. Each story added weight to the prosecution's argument. This wasn't isolated behavior, but systematic predation protected by wealth. Jake's testimony caused the biggest stir. He entered looking genuinely remorseful, speaking clearly about Ashley's campaign to destroy our marriage. He played the voicemail she'd left while I was in labor with Emma. The jury's disgust was visible. She made a bet with Brittany Colton, Jake testified. $5,000 that she could break up our marriage within 2 years. She won. Blackwood tried to discredit him on cross-examination, painting him as a bitter ex-husband. But Jake remained steady. I'm not proud of my actions. I failed my wife and daughter. But that doesn't change what Ashley did. She systematically destroyed our marriage for entertainment. My mother testified for the prosecution as promised. Her transformation was complete, the polished society woman replaced by someone haunted by their choices. We created a monster. she said simply. Every time Ashley hurt someone, we paid them off. We taught her that violence had a price tag, usually between $15,000 and $25,000. We stole from Miranda's college fund to finance Ashley's crimes. We chose preserving our image over justice, over our older daughter's safety, over basic human decency. Why? Torres asked gently. Why did you enable this for so long? My mother's voice broke. Because admitting Ashley was violent meant admitting we were failures as parents. It was easier to blame the victims, to gaslight Miranda, to throw money at problems. We convinced ourselves we were protecting Ashley. Instead, we were creating a predator. The defense's case was weaker. They brought in a psychiatrist who'd never actually treated Ashley to testify about potential mental illness. They tried to paint the victims as money-hungry opportunists. They suggested I was jealous of my beautiful younger sister. But their biggest mistake was putting Ashley on the stand. She'd clearly been coached, but jail had eroded her ability to maintain the performance. She started well enough crying about her difficult childhood, her struggles with mental health, her jealous sister, who'd always resented her. Then Torres began cross-examination. Ms. Bennett, you testified that you've struggled with mental health issues. Which doctors have treated you? Ashley faltered. Various doctors over the years. Can you name one? I don't remember specifically. Torres pulled out records. Because according to our investigation, you've never seen a mental health professional. Your parents tried to arrange therapy after the Melissa Chen incident, when you were 15, but you refused to attend after 2 sessions. Those doctors didn't understand me. Ashley snapped the mask, slipping. Like the 43 women who testified didn't understand you. They're lying. They're all jealous, pathetic liars who want money. All 43 are lying. Torres's voice was incredulous. The security footage is lying. The medical records are lying. Your own journal is lying. Ashley's composure cracked completely. You don't understand what it's like. Miranda got everything. The grades, the friends, the baby. All I wanted was to be beautiful, to be special. And she couldn't even give me $3,000. So you fractured her skull. She deserved it. Ashley screamed, then caught herself. But it was too late. The courtroom erupted. Judge Harrison banged her gavel as Ashley tried to backtrack, claiming she misspoke, that she was emotional. But the jury had seen the truth, the entitled rage that drove her violence. Closing arguments were formalities after that. Torres painted a picture of systematic violence enabled by privilege, while Blackwood desperately tried to salvage his client's image. But Ashley's own words, "She deserved it," hung over everything. The jury deliberated for only 4 hours. As we waited, the victims' group sat together, sharing stories, supporting each other. These women who'd been isolated by Bennett money had found community in their shared trauma. When the verdict came, Ashley stood with her attorneys trying to project confidence. On the charge of assault with intent to cause great bodily harm, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of grand theft, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of identity fraud, we find the defendant guilty. The guilty verdicts continued for all 37 charges. With each one, Ashley seemed to shrink. By the end, she was sobbing real tears this time, the tears of someone finally facing consequences. Judge Harrison set sentencing for 2 weeks later. As court officers led Ashley away, she turned to look at our parents. "Daddy, fix this," she cried, reverting to the child who'd always been saved from her actions. But Frank Bennett just shook his head, looking every one of his 70 years. Outside the courthouse, the victims' group gathered. 43 women who'd been silenced now stood together in victory. The media was there, but this time we welcomed it. These women deserved to have their voices heard. Justice was served today, Jennifer Walsh told reporters. Not just for Miranda, but for all of us who were told our pain was worth less than the Bennett family reputation. I stood with my arms around several of the women, feeling a bond forged in shared trauma and triumph. We'd done it. We'd held Ashley accountable despite the money, the lawyers, the gaslighting. That evening, I tucked Emma into bed at Sarah's house. "Is it over, Mommy?" she asked. "Is Aunt Ashley going to jail for her big time out?" "Yes, baby. The jury decided she needs consequences for hurting people." Emma nodded solemnly. "Good. Maybe when she gets out, she'll know better. Like when I had time out for hitting Chloe and then I learned to use my words instead. If only it were that simple." But I kissed her goodnight, letting her maintain faith in redemption and second chances. She'd learned soon enough that some people choose cruelty even when they know better. The trial was over. Justice had been served. But as I sat in Sarah's living room that night, I knew the hardest part was still coming. Rebuilding a life free from the toxic dynamics that had defined my existence for 28 years. Ashley was going to prison. My parents' reputation was destroyed. Jake was trying to make amends. And I was free, truly free for the first time in my life to build something new from the ashes of what my family had burned down. The verdict was guilty, but more importantly, the verdict was freedom. The 2 weeks between verdict and sentencing passed in a blur of media attention and personal reflection. Ashley's conviction had become national news, with think pieces about privilege, family violence, and the power of social media to give victims a voice. The Facebook group had grown to over 10,000 members, becoming a support network for survivors of family violence worldwide. The morning of sentencing arrived with spring rain that felt appropriate, washing away the old making room for new growth. The courthouse was even more packed than during the trial, with victims' rights advocates joining Ashley's survivors to witness justice completed. I sat in the front row with Catherine, Sarah, and Grace. Jake was there too, in the row behind, maintaining respectful distance while showing support. My parents sat across the aisle, my mother clutching tissues, my father staring straight ahead with hollow eyes. Ashley was brought in looking haggard. Jail had stripped away every artifice, revealing the angry, entitled person she'd always been beneath the polish. She didn't look at anyone, keeping her eyes fixed on the defense table. Judge Harrison began with victim impact statements. One by one, women stood to address their attacker directly. Jennifer Walsh went first. "Ashley, you gave me a concussion and nightmares that lasted years. But worse, you made me doubt my worth. The $20,000 your parents paid felt like the price tag on my pain. Today I take my power back." Megan Hartley showed her burn scars. "These are permanent reminders of your violence, but they're also reminders that I survived, that I'm stronger than you ever imagined. Your attacks didn't break us, they revealed your weakness." Diana Morse spoke about rebuilding. "You destroyed my business, but not my spirit. I started over, stronger and wiser. Your cruelty taught me resilience I didn't know I had." Each statement added weight to the room. Ashley kept her head down, whether from shame or strategy, unclear. Then it was my turn. I'd written and rewritten my statement dozens of times, trying to capture 28 years of dysfunction in a few minutes. Standing at the podium facing my sister, I spoke from the heart. "Ashley, you're my sister. I protected you from playground bullies, helped you with homework, made excuses for your behavior for decades. In return, you systematically destroyed my life. You isolated me from friends, sabotaged my marriage, stole my money, traumatized my daughter, and fractured my skull. But here's what you never understood. You didn't break me. Every attack made me stronger. Every manipulation taught me to recognize truth. Every moment of violence showed me what I refused to become. You thought you were special, above consequences, entitled to whatever you wanted. Today you learn what I've known my whole life: actions have consequences. I don't hate you, Ashley. I pity you. You had every advantage: wealth, beauty, parents who would do anything for you. You could have been anything, done anything. Instead, you chose violence and cruelty. That's not my failure or our parents' failure. That's your choice. I hope prison gives you what our parents never did: boundaries, accountability, and the chance to change. But whether you take that chance is up to you. I'm done enabling, done excusing, done accepting abuse as the price of family. My daughter will grow up knowing that love doesn't hurt, that family protects. rather than harms that violence is never acceptable. You fractured my skull, but you freed my spirit. For that, ironically, I thank you. I returned to my seat as Ashley finally looked up. For just a moment, I saw something in her eyes, recognition, regret, before the familiar hardness returned. Ada Torres addressed the court next, detailing the scope of Ashley's crimes. Your Honor, the defendant has shown a pattern of escalating violence over 15 years. 43 documented victims, hundreds of thousands in hush money, 0 genuine remorse. She poses a clear danger to society. We request the maximum sentence on all charges. Blackwood made a final plea for leniency, citing Ashley's age, lack of prior convictions, thanks to the cover-ups and potential for rehabilitation. But his heart wasn't in it. Even he seemed to recognize the futility. Judge Harrison called a brief recess before pronouncing sentence. When we reconvened, the courtroom fell silent. Ms. Bennett, please rise. Ashley stood shakily, flanked by bailiffs. The court has reviewed extensive evidence, victim testimony, and psychological evaluations. You've been convicted of 37 charges ranging from assault to fraud. The pattern of behavior demonstrated shows not momentary lapses in judgment, but calculated cruelty spanning years. Your privileged background, far from being a mitigating factor, makes your crimes worse. You had every opportunity to seek help to change course, to make amends. Instead, you escalated, enabled by parents who valued reputation over justice. The court sentences you to 15 years in state prison. Additionally, you are ordered to pay full restitution to all victims, totaling $437,000. Upon release, you'll have 5 years probation with mandatory psychological treatment and no contact with any victims, including your sister and niece. The gavel came down with finality. Ashley's reaction was explosive. 15 years for what? For teaching my ungrateful sister a lesson. This is insane. Daddy, do something. But Frank Bennett sat frozen, the reality of his daughter's fate settling over him like a shroud. As bailiffs moved to take Ashley away, she turned to me with pure hatred. You destroyed our family. I hope you're happy. Our family was already destroyed, I replied quietly. I just stopped hiding it. She lunged toward me, but the bailiffs were ready, restraining her as she screamed obscenities. The last image of Ashley was her being dragged away, designer shoes, scuffing against the floor, voice hoarse from screaming about unfairness and jealousy. When the courtroom cleared, my parents approached. We hadn't spoken since my mother's testimony. Miranda. My father began, then stopped, seemingly at a loss. We're going away, my mother said quietly. Selling the house, liquidating assets to pay Ashley's restitution, your father's retiring. We need to figure out who we are without the lies. Where will you go? I asked, surprised by the concern in my voice. Florida, maybe. Somewhere we can start over. Somewhere people don't know the Bennett name. She hesitated. I put something in your mailbox. Not money, you were right to refuse that. Something else. Something I should have given you years ago. They left without asking about Emma, without seeking forgiveness. Perhaps they knew neither was possible yet. That evening, the survivors group held a celebration at a local restaurant. 43 women who'd been isolated by Bennett money, now bound by shared triumph. We toasted justice, healing, and new beginnings. You gave us our voices back, Lisa Chen said, raising her glass to me. We gave each other our voices back, I corrected. I couldn't have done this alone. The media coverage of the sentencing was extensive. Opinion pieces debated whether 15 years was too harsh or too lenient. The Facebook group became a model for survivor advocacy, with similar groups forming nationwide. Ashley's story became a cautionary tale about privilege without accountability. When I got home to Sarah's that night, I found the package my mother had left. Inside was a worn leather journal, my grandmother's diary from when my mother was young. A note was attached. Your grandmother saw the darkness in me early, tried to warn me about the dangers of valuing appearance over substance. I didn't listen. Maybe understanding where I went wrong will help you avoid my mistakes. She would have been proud of your courage. Mom. I spent hours reading my grandmother's words, seeing my mother's childhood through wiser eyes. The patterns were there, the emphasis on perfection, the inability to admit fault the way image mattered more than truth. My grandmother had tried to break the cycle. My mother had failed, but I had succeeded. Emma woke up as I was closing the journal. Mommy, did Aunt Ashley get her big consequence? Yes, baby. She's going to prison for a long time. Emma considered this. Will she learn to be nice there? I don't know, sweetheart. That's up to her. I hope she does, Emma said with 6-year-old sincerity. It's sad to be mean all the time. Being nice feels better. From the mouths of babes. A week later, I met with Catherine to discuss the restitution distribution. The $400,000 would be divided among Ashley's victims, with a portion going to establish a fund for future family violence survivors. You could take a significant amount, Catherine noted. Your medical bills, lost wages, pain and suffering, you have the strongest claim. I want enough to cover Emma's surgery and establish her college fund. The rest should go to the women who've waited years for acknowledgement. Catherine smiled. You're breaking the Bennett pattern of greed along with everything else. Jake had started regular visitation with Emma, supervised at first, but gradually building trust. He'd maintained sobriety, attended every therapy session, and began rebuilding his relationship with our daughter. We weren't friends, too much damage for that, but we were becoming effective co-parents. 3 months after sentencing, I received a letter from Ashley. I almost threw it away, unopened, but curiosity won. Her handwriting was still perfect, even from prison. Miranda. They make us write apology letters in therapy here. This is attempt number 23. The others were lies. I hated you from the moment you were born. You were smarter, kinder, more loved despite their claims otherwise. Every achievement of yours felt like a theft from me. Every moment of attention you received was attention I deserved. I'm not sorry for wanting what you had. I'm not even sorry for trying to take it. I'm sorry I was stupid enough to get caught. Prison is hell for someone like me. No beauty treatments, no designer clothes, no one who cares about my Instagram follower count. But here's the thing, I still don't think I did anything wrong. Those women were weak. You were weak. The fact that you all banded together doesn't make you strong. It makes you pathetic sheep who needed a group to take down one wolf. 15 years is a long time. Long enough to plan exactly how I'll destroy you when I get out. You, Emma, everyone who testified against me. I have nothing but time to plan. Consider this your warning, Ashley. P.S. The therapist will probably read this before it's sent. Hi, Dr. Martin. Yes, I know this isn't the apology you wanted, but at least it's honest. I showed the letter to Catherine, who immediately filed it as evidence of continued threat. Ashley had violated her no-contact order and shown zero rehabilitation. The letter would ensure she served every day of her sentence without early release. But the letter also freed me from any lingering guilt. Ashley wasn't sick or misunderstood or failed by the system. She was exactly what she'd always been, a predator who felt entitled to destroy others for sport. Prison wouldn't rehabilitate her because she didn't want rehabilitation. That night, I made a decision. Sarah had offered to convert her garage into an apartment for Emma and me to stay long-term. I'd been hesitant, not wanting to impose, but looking at the letter, at the threat it contained, I knew Emma and I needed a stable, secure home surrounded by genuine love. We'd love to stay, I told Sarah over dinner. If you'll have us. Finally, Sarah laughed. I've already got contractors lined up. Emma can help design her room. As Emma excitedly discussed paint colors and butterfly decorations, I felt something I'd almost forgotten existed: peace. Not the fake peace of managing Ashley's moods or meeting my parents' expectations, but real peace. Safety. Home. The verdict had been guilty. The sentence had been just. But the real victory was simpler. Emma and I were free to build a life based on truth, love, and healthy boundaries. Ashley was behind bars, but more importantly, she was out of our heads and hearts. The space she'd occupied with her violence and manipulation was filling with something better: genuine relationships, self-respect, and hope for a future free from fear. 15 years. Long enough for Emma to grow up, graduate high school, maybe even college. Long enough to build a life so solid that whatever revenge Ashley plotted would bounce off like rain on granite. She could plan all she wanted from her prison cell. We'd be too busy living to notice. 6 months after Ashley's sentencing, autumn painted the world in shades of gold and crimson, marking not just a change in seasons, but a transformation in our lives. The garage apartment at Sarah's house had become a real home, with Emma's artwork covering the walls and a small garden we'd planted together thriving by the entrance. The morning started like many others, with Emma chattering over breakfast about her second-grade adventures. But the mail brought an unexpected surprise that would shift our healing journey in ways I couldn't have imagined. "Miranda, you need to see this," Sarah said, handing me an official-looking envelope from the state legislature. Inside was an invitation that made my hands tremble. The Judiciary Committee was holding hearings on a bill inspired by our case legislation to close loopholes that had allowed financial abuse within families and to strengthen protections for victims of family violence. "They're calling it Miranda's Law," Sarah read over my shoulder. "They want you to testify next week." The weight of it settled over me. My name attached to legislation that could protect others from what I'd endured. It felt surreal. That afternoon, Catherine called with more news. "The district attorney's office has been investigating your parents' financial crimes based on the trial evidence. They've uncovered a pattern of tax evasion and money laundering connected to the victim payoffs. Your father's facing federal charges." The Bennett empire, built on commercial real estate and criminal cover-ups, was crumbling. I felt no satisfaction, only a hollow sadness for the waste of it all. The next few days blurred with preparation for the legislative testimony. Catherine helped me craft a statement that balanced personal experience with policy recommendations. The Facebook support group rallied, with hundreds of members writing to their representatives in support of the bill. Jake called the night before I was due to testify. "I saw the news about the hearing. Miranda, I'm proud of you." Emma asked if she could watch on the live stream during her lunch break at school. I told her it was up to you. "She wants to watch." The idea of Emma seeing me testify about family violence made me pause. She said her mom is a hero, making sure bad people can't hurt families anymore. Her words. His voice carried a mix of pride and regret. "You're showing her what courage looks like." The legislative hearing room was intimidating: wood-paneled walls, formal seating cameras recording every word for public record. But the gallery was filled with familiar faces, survivors from our group. Catherine, Sarah, even Grace had driven down to support me. When my turn came, I sat before the committee, 7 legislators who would decide whether our pain could prevent future suffering. "My name is Miranda Bennett." I began, my voice steady despite the cameras. 6 months ago, my sister fractured my skull because I wouldn't give her money for cosmetic procedures. But the real crime started decades earlier, when my parents began paying off her victims to avoid consequences. I laid out the pattern: 19 documented assaults over 13 years, hundreds of thousands in hush money victims silenced by wealth and power. I explained how existing laws had failed us, how financial abuse within families was nearly impossible to prosecute, how victims often had no recourse when family members stole their identities or drained their accounts. My parents stole my college fund to pay off my sister's victims. They gave her my banking information, enabling her to steal money meant for my daughter's medical care. Current laws treat family financial abuse as a civil matter, forcing victims to sue relatives they're often still dependent on or afraid of. Miranda's Law would change that. Committee member Senator Patricia Hawkins leaned forward. "Ms. Bennett, your case has opened many eyes to these issues, but some argue this law could be used vindictively in family disputes. How do we protect against that?" "The same way we protect against false accusations in any crime," I replied. "Through evidence investigation and due process. But right now, victims like me have no process at all. We're told family matters are private, that theft is just borrowing, that violence is just sibling rivalry. This law doesn't create new ways to hurt families. It acknowledges that some families are already hurting their members. The questions continued for an hour. I shared Sarah's documentation, the pattern of Ashley's escalation, the community impact when one violent person is enabled for years. I spoke about Emma watching her aunt attack me about the message we send children when family violence goes unpunished. When I finished, the committee chair thanked me for my courage. Your testimony has been invaluable. We'll be voting on Miranda's law next month. Outside the Capitol building, reporters waited, but this time I was ready for them. This isn't about revenge or punishment, I told the gathered media. It's about prevention. How many Ashleys are out there escalating because they've never faced consequences? How many Mirandas are being gaslit into silence? This law could save lives. The coverage was immediate and overwhelmingly positive. Miranda's law began trending, with thousands sharing their own stories of family financial abuse and violence. The movement had grown beyond my story into something bigger, a reckoning with the ways family ties had been used to enable abuse. That evening, Emma bounded into my arms full of excitement. I watched you on the computer at lunch. Mrs. Peterson said you're making history. I'm just trying to keep families safe, I said, hugging her tight. Like a superhero, Emma declared. But instead of fighting with punches, you fight with words and laws. From the mouths of babes once again. The next few weeks brought unexpected ripples from the testimony. A publisher reached out about turning our story into a book that could help other survivors. A foundation offered to fund Emma's surgery, completely wanting to ensure no child went without medical care due to family financial abuse. Universities invited me to speak about breaking cycles of violence. But the most meaningful change was personal. Jake had been consistently present for 6 months, never missing a visitation, always respectful of boundaries, while working to rebuild his relationship with Emma. He'd continued therapy, maintained sobriety, and slowly earned back trust. One evening, as he dropped Emma off after their Saturday together, he lingered on the doorstep. Miranda, I've been thinking about the legislative testimony, about patterns and cycles. My therapist helped me realize I came from my own dysfunctional family, different from yours but broken in its own way. I repeated those patterns until they destroyed us. Jake, I started, but he held up a hand. I'm not asking for forgiveness or reconciliation. I'm asking if you'd consider family counseling, not to rebuild our marriage that ship has sailed, but to build something better for Emma. To show her that people can acknowledge their failures and work to do better. I thought about cycles, about my grandmother's diary warning of patterns repeating through generations about Emma deserving better than what we'd known. I'll think about it, I said, meaning it. 2 weeks later, Miranda's law passed committee unanimously. The full legislature would vote next session, but the momentum felt unstoppable. Other states were already drafting similar legislation, creating a patchwork of protection that could become nationwide. Catherine called with updates on the various legal proceedings. Your father pled guilty to tax evasion and money laundering. He's looking at 3 to 5 years federal prison. Your mother was granted immunity in exchange for testimony. The family assets are being liquidated to pay restitution and fines. The Bennett fortune built on legitimate business and illegitimate cover-ups was gone. Everything my parents had sacrificed their integrity to protect had evaporated like morning mist. There's one more thing, Catherine added. Ashley's prison called. She's been placed in solitary after attacking another inmate who wouldn't give her commissary items. She's also been denied participation in work programs due to violence against staff. Even in prison, Ashley couldn't stop her patterns. Without money to enable her or family to cover for her, she was finally facing the natural consequences of her behavior. 15 years of that seemed like its own kind of justice. That night, I found myself in Emma's room watching her sleep peacefully. Her walls were covered with new drawings, our little family of 3 she'd started including Sarah butterflies, emerging from cocoons, and rainbows after storms. Visual metaphors from a 7-year-old processing trauma and healing. My phone buzzed with a message from the Facebook support group. Membership had passed 15,000 with international chapters forming. Women who'd been silenced by family violence were finding voices filing charges seeking justice. The ripple effects of one cracked skull had become waves of change. I thought about Ashley in her solitary cell, still blaming everyone but herself. My parents in their empty mansion preparing for federal prison and exile. The family I'd been born into had shattered completely. But from those sharp fragments, I'd built something new. A chosen family with Sarah and Grace. A co-parenting relationship with Jake based on truth rather than fantasy. A daughter who knew her worth and wouldn't accept violence from anyone. A community of survivors who understood that family shouldn't hurt. The reflection staring back from Emma's window wasn't the scared, gaslit woman who'd apologized for existing. It was someone who'd faced down a lifetime of dysfunction and said no more. Someone whose name would be on a law protecting others. Someone who'd learned that breaking cycles sometimes requires breaking away entirely. Healing wasn't linear. There were still nights I woke up feeling the impact of marble against skull, still moments when I heard my mother's voice calling me dramatic. But those moments were fewer, softer, unable to take root in the new life I'd cultivated. As I closed Emma's door and headed to my own room, my phone showed one last notification. The publisher had sent a contract for the book with an advance that would secure Emma's college fund permanently. Our story of survival would help others find their own paths to freedom. I signed the contract at my small desk, watching autumn rain wash the world clean outside. In 6 months, I'd gone from a hospital bed with a fractured skull to testifying before legislators, from isolation to community, from victim to advocate. Ashley had meant to destroy me. Instead, she'd freed me to become who I was meant to be. And that transformation from target to survivor to thriver was the greatest revenge of all. The healing would continue tomorrow and the next day and the day after that. But tonight, in our little apartment filled with love and safety and possibility, it was enough to simply be free. 2 years had passed since that morning I woke up with a fractured skull in a hospital bed. 2 years of healing growth and unexpected transformations. As I stood in the kitchen of our new house, yes, our own house, preparing Emma's 8th birthday cake, I marveled at how different life had become. The doorbell rang and Emma raced to answer it, her laughter echoing through rooms we'd painted together. "Grandma Grace is here," she called out, leading Jake's mother inside, with the familiarity of family. "The birthday girl," Grace exclaimed, setting down presents before hugging me warmly. "Miranda, the house looks wonderful. I still can't believe you managed to buy it." The house, a modest 3-bedroom in a good school district, had been possible thanks to the book advance and speaking fees from sharing our story. Breaking the silence. A family's journey from violence to victory had spent 6 weeks on bestseller lists, resonating with survivors worldwide. But more importantly, it had funded this fresh start. "Is Dad coming?" Emma asked Grace, and I noticed she'd stopped calling Jake by his first name months ago, a sign of healing I'd never pushed for but deeply appreciated. "He's parking the car. He brought someone special to meet you," Grace said with a knowing smile. Through therapy and consistent effort, Jake had rebuilt his relationship with Emma. Our family counseling sessions had evolved from tense negotiations to productive conversations about co-parenting. He'd maintained sobriety for over 2 years, worked steadily as a music teacher, and slowly earned back trust. Jake entered carrying more presents, followed by a woman I recognized from photos Emma had shown me, Lisa, the fellow teacher he'd been dating for 6 months. She looked nervous but kind, holding a homemade card obviously crafted with care. "Emma, this is Ms. Lisa," Jake said carefully. "She wanted to wish you happy birthday." Emma studied her with that direct child's gaze before declaring, "Dad says you make really good cookies. Did you bring any, The ice broken, Lisa laughed. "I did, actually. Chocolate chip and snickerdoodles." As they chatted, Jake pulled me aside. "Thank you for letting me bring her. I know it's a big step." "Emma likes her," I said simply. "That's what matters." It was true. Through our family counseling, we'd established clear boundaries and expectations. Jake dating wasn't about replacing our family. It was about him building a healthy life that positively impacted Emma. The fact that he'd waited 2 years, chosen someone stable and kind, and introduced her appropriately showed growth I'd once thought impossible. The party filled with familiar faces. Sarah arrived with her new girlfriend, someone she'd met at a family violence prevention workshop. Several women from our support group came with their children. Friendships forged in shared trauma had become genuine connections based on mutual respect and joy. Detective Rodriguez stopped by with his family having become an advocate for family violence prevention after our case. "Miranda, did you see the news? 3 more states passed versions of Miranda's law this month. That's 37 states now with strengthened family financial abuse protections." The legislation had exceeded everyone's expectations. What started as closing loopholes in one state had become a nationwide movement. Law schools taught our case as a landmark example of survivor advocacy changing systems. As Emma opened presents, I noticed a package I didn't recognize. The return address made my breath catch the federal prison where my father was serving his sentence. Should I open it? I asked Catherine, who'd become as much friend as attorney over the years. "Your choice, but I'm here either way." Inside was a wooden jewelry box handcrafted with obvious care. The note was in my father's precise handwriting. "Miranda Prison gives you time to think and work with your hands. I made this for Emma. It's not an apology. I know I haven't earned the right to apologize yet. It's just something made with love for a granddaughter I failed. I've been attending therapy here, learning about cycles, about choices, about the difference between loving someone and enabling them. I loved Ashley wrong. I loved you wrong too in different ways. I'm trying to learn better. Your mother writes that you bought a house, that Emma is thriving, that you've built something beautiful from the ashes we created. I'm proud of you, though. I know those words ring hollow from someone who caused such harm. I don't expect forgiveness or contact. I just wanted Emma to have something from her grandfather that wasn't tainted with cover-ups and lies. Something honest made by hands finally doing honest work. Frank. I set the box aside to decide about later feeling the complex emotions that came with family attempting accountability. My mother had written occasionally respecting my boundaries while sharing her own journey through therapy and volunteer work with family violence survivors. Neither parent had asked to see Emma understanding that privilege had to be earned, not assumed. "Mommy, can we do the cake now?" Emma called, bouncing with 8-year-old energy. As everyone gathered around singing "Happy Birthday," I caught sight of something that stopped me cold. Through the window across the street, a woman sat in a car watching our house. Even from a distance, even after 2 years, I recognized the silhouette. "Catherine," I whispered, nodding toward the window. She looked, her expression hardening. "That's a violation of the restraining order. I'm calling—" But the car was already pulling away. Ashley, it had to be. Ashley was gone before anyone else noticed. "Everything okay?" Jake asked, picking up on the tension. "Fine," I said, deciding not to let Ashley's presence ruin Emma's day. "Let's cut this cake." But that evening, after the guests had gone and Emma was asleep clutching the stuffed dolphin Sarah had given her Catherine, and I sat with Detective Rodriguez reviewing security footage from neighbors. It was definitely Ashley, Rodriguez confirmed. She was released 6 days ago. 6 days. I felt the old fear creeping back. She only served 2 years of a 15-year sentence. "Overcrowding and good behavior credits," he explained grimly, though her definition of good behavior was apparently just not assaulting staff for the last 6 months. She's on probation with strict conditions, no contact with victims, mandatory therapy, regular check-ins. She's already violated by coming here. "So arrest her," I said, anger replacing fear. "We've issued a warrant. But Miranda, you need to be careful. Prison didn't rehabilitate Ashley. Reports suggest she spent 2 years nursing grudges and planning revenge. She formed alliances with other inmates who taught her to be smarter about violence, not less violent. I thought about the letter Ashley had sent from prison promising to destroy everyone who testified against her. At the time, it had seemed like impotent rage. Now, with her free and watching my daughter's birthday party, it felt like a credible threat. "We're increasing patrols," Rodriguez assured me, "and I'm fast-tracking a protection detail request, but you should consider additional security measures." That night, I sat in Emma's room watching her sleep peacefully and made hard decisions. By morning, I'd arranged for a security system panic buttons and self-defense classes for both of us. The local school was alerted to the situation with Ashley's photo distributed to all staff. Jake texted, "Heard about Ashley. Emma can stay with me until she's caught. Lisa has a gated community with security." The offer, genuinely protective rather than opportunistic, showed how far we'd all come. But running wasn't the answer. "We're not hiding," I replied. "We're not giving her that power again." The next few days were tense but normal. Emma went to school. I worked on articles about survivor advocacy. Life continued with increased vigilance but not paralysis. Then Catherine called with unexpected news. "Ashley's in custody. She was arrested trying to break into your parents' old house, apparently didn't know it had been sold. The new owners called police. She attacked the responding officer. With a probation violation and new assault, she's going back for the full sentence, plus additional time." Relief flooded through me. Ashley's obsession with the past, with reclaiming what she thought was hers, had been her downfall. She'd returned to the scene of her privileged life, only to find it belonged to strangers now, just like the power she'd once wielded through violence and fear. A week later, with Ashley safely back in prison, we held a different kind of gathering. The publisher was launching a foundation in conjunction with the book, the Breaking Silence Foundation, to provide legal support for family violence survivors who couldn't afford representation. Standing before a room of survivors, advocates, and supporters, I spoke about transformation. 2 years ago, my sister fractured my skull over $3,000. Today, that assault has led to legislation protecting millions, a book helping thousands find their voices, and a foundation ensuring money never again silences violence. She meant to destroy me. Instead, she created a movement. Emma sat in the front row between Jake and Sarah, beaming with pride. She designed the foundation's logo, a butterfly emerging from a cracked shell representing transformation through brokenness. My mother attended, sitting quietly in the back. We'd begun tentative contact after her years of therapy and genuine accountability. She'd volunteered with family violence organizations, testified before legislatures about enabling abuse, and donated her remaining assets to victim support services. Reconciliation might never be complete, but acknowledgement of harm and consistent action toward repair had opened doors I'd once thought permanently closed. That night, as I tucked Emma into bed, she asked, "Mommy, is Aunt Ashley ever going to stop being angry?" I chose honesty, tempered with hope. "I don't know, baby. Some people hold on to anger like treasure, but that's her choice. Our choice is to live good lives regardless of her anger. Like how butterflies don't go back to being caterpillars just because the caterpillar was mad about changing." Exactly like that. Later, I stood in my own kitchen in my own house, bought with money earned from my own story, and marveled at the journey. The skull fracture had healed, leaving only the faintest scar hidden by hair. The deeper wounds had scarred over, too tender sometimes, but no longer bleeding. Ashley was back in prison facing a full sentence, plus additional time. My parents were finding their own paths to redemption. Jake had become the father Emma deserved, and I had become someone I'd never imagined: an advocate, an author, a voice for those still trapped in silence. The woman who'd apologized for existing had transformed into someone who spoke before Congress about family violence prevention. The mother who'd struggled to afford her daughter's surgery now ran a foundation ensuring other parents wouldn't face that impossible choice. The sister who'd made excuses for abuse now helped others recognize and escape similar patterns. I thought about everyone who'd testified at Ashley's trial, 43 women who'd found courage in collective action. The Facebook group had grown to 50,000 members worldwide. Miranda's Law had passed in 42 states. The book had been translated into 15 languages. The ripples from one violent morning had become waves of change I never could have imagined. My phone buzzed with a message from a survivor in Texas. "Your book saved my life. I finally pressed charges against my brother. Thank you for showing me it was possible." These messages came daily now, strangers finding strength in shared story, breaking their own cycles of violence and silence. Each one reminded me that healing wasn't just personal, but communal, that one voice raised could harmonize with thousands. As I prepared for bed, I found the wooden jewelry box my father had made for Emma. After much consideration, I'd decided to give it to her, not as acceptance of his past behavior, but as acknowledgement that people could change, could learn, could craft something beautiful, even after creating destruction. The box sat on Emma's dresser now, holding her small treasures, friendship bracelets, lucky pennies, a photo of our rebuilt family. It seemed fitting, something made in prison, holding symbols of freedom crafted by hands that had once covered violence, now creating with care. 2 years. In 2 years, I'd gone from victim to survivor to advocate to author to foundation president, from fractured skull to healed spirit, from isolation to community, from silence to voice. But most importantly, in 2 years, Emma had gone from traumatized witness to confident child, secure in love, that didn't hurt, supported by adults who'd done the work to break generational patterns. She would grow up knowing her worth, using her voice, expecting respect as baseline, rather than luxury. That was the real victory, not the legislation or book sales or foundation grants, but an 8-year-old girl sleeping peacefully in her own room, in her own house, surrounded by healthy love and unshakable safety. Ashley had swung for my skull, intending to silence me forever. Instead, she'd cracked open something that needed breaking, the shell of dysfunction I'd been trapped in for 28 years. And from that violent breaking had emerged something beautiful, strong and free. As I turned off the lights and headed to bed, I whispered a prayer of gratitude for fractures that become openings for endings, that become beginnings for silences, that become songs. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new survivors seeking help, new battles for justice and healing. But tonight, in a house bought with truth-telling, filled with chosen family, protected by boundaries and laws that bore my name, I was simply grateful. The skull fracture had healed. The life fracture had been transformed into foundation for something stronger than what came before. And that transformation from victim to victor, from silenced to speaker, from broken to builder, was ongoing, rippling outward in waves that would continue long after we were gone. Ashley thought she was ending my story that morning on my parents' marble floor. Instead, she'd written the first line of a new chapter that thousands would read, share, and use to write their own stories of survival and triumph. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the catalyst for the best thing you become. Sometimes a fractured skull is just the beginning of a beautiful breaking open. Sometimes sisters who try to destroy you accidentally set you free. And sometimes, just sometimes, that freedom spreads like wildfire, warming and lighting the way for others still trapped in darkness, proving that violence may fracture, but it cannot ultimately break the human spirit's capacity to heal, grow and transform pain into purpose. 2 years, 42 states, 50,000 survivors, one fractured skull that became a movement. Not bad for a woman who once apologized for existing. Not bad at all. Dear viewers, thank you for joining me on this journey from darkness to light. If you've experienced family violence or financial abuse, know that you're not alone. Your story matters. Your voice deserves to be heard. Have you or someone you know faced similar challenges? What gave you the strength to break free? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your words might be the encouragement someone needs today. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories of triumph over adversity. Share this video with anyone who might need to hear that survival is possible, that breaking cycles is achievable, and that sometimes our worst moments become the foundation for our greatest purpose. Remember, family shouldn't hurt, love shouldn't leave bruises, and silence in the face of violence is not loyalty, it's complicity. Stay strong, speak your truth, and know that you deserve safety, respect, and love that heals rather than harms. Until next time, this is Miranda's story, but it might be yours too. Break the silence, break the cycle, build something beautiful from the broken pieces.